Yo, what's goody, what's goody? Welcome back to Roti and Poutine. I am the MC Armani Rain, joined once again with the valiant MC, the T.R.A.C. And we are joined with a very, very special guest, a friend to the three of us, someone we have all looked up to, respected. He's been nothing but the most humble person, along with the many accolades we will go over today. Representative straight out of, I would say, the entire Canada region.
Probably,
You know what I'm saying? Like, good.
I was gonna say probably one of the most livest markets for drum and bass in North America, pretty
Facts.
much. You know what I mean? A lot of boomtown happening
Yeah,
there.
we're gonna get into that.
All right.
We're gonna
Well,
get
all
Yeah,
right.
we're gonna
some
get into
Toronto
that for
talk.
sure.
You know what I mean?
Some super T dot,
Yeah.
a man who's shown respect to everyone I've known, and every time we've stepped into the building, every time we've stepped into the venue, been a soldier carrying the torch for very such a long time. But let's get into the accolades. But first, say hello, give a round of applause for the one and only Marcus Visionary. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, man. I can't lie. Like, things have been pretty good. I mean,
That's
there's been
good.
some
Doesn't you?
hiccups, but I like everyone is going through so much right
So
now. If you're
much,
not
yeah,
going through a
man.
lot right now, something's up.
Right.
You part of
But
that.
you're
You
I
part
think.
of this. Yeah.
you're allowed to find light in the middle of this darkness, though, man. We
Mhm.
we hope that people can do that. So please, if you're feeling good, say you're feeling good. It makes the
I
rest of us
feel
feel nice.
good. That's,
You
You know
know what I
what?
mean?
It's kind of like the good and bad has been like equal. Is it in for a lot of people that I've been speaking to. I mean, obviously, as artists, we found time to really focus and like my whole thing has changed.
Right.
Like
mm,
creatively, like I'm like I found my way again, because
Nice.
Okay.
the thing is I've been doing it since the 80s. So
Right.
like, I just aged
Right.
myself, right?
No, you're fine.
And
We're all
All
old.
right.
and the thing
Yeah.
about
For
the thing
sure.
about drum and bass in jungle is just like it continuously evolving. So like some people, like I'll bump into people and they'll say, you know what, I used to like Marcus from 1995,
mm.
or I liked
Which is
Marcus
funny.
from 2003, because
Right.
your sound changes. And if your sound doesn't change, something's wrong, right? Because like as artists, you guys all know, like if you think about track now or Armani now to you guys 10 years ago, or
Oh, let's
Valiant
not do
as
that.
well, you know what I mean? You're no, but your whole thing creatively, you change, you look at music
Yeah,
differently,
for sure.
and
Absolutely.
sometimes as artists, people get afraid of change, but and it's
It,
difficult for your fans. Like
it,
if your fans like one thing about you,
right.
and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm going this way.
Right.
We're gonna break out the pitchforks.
It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
oxymoronic though, because it's the change that nobody pays attention to, because we change no matter what. We adapt to whatever the situation is as we progress. And it's not just us, it's also the complainers who say they're stuck in a lapse. They like a certain style that they will always like, but they're still living in the now with all this amongst everything that they remember. So I think it's just that holding on to something that you love. And now with technology, you can listen to that song from 1994 a million times and not worry about anything moving around you. So you
Another
kind of
layer
have time right there.
another layer of that is people like us, especially the four of us in this group right here.
Hmm.
Our whole thing is to stay ahead of the curve, right? None of us got in this to follow a trend. Like we fell in love with the music, and then you take our own creative spirits in front of that and apply the two, and we're constantly evolving and changing to stay ahead of the sound, while we also try to preserve the history of it all. Like our whole thing is to make sure that we come up with the thing that nobody's thinking of. So, but we'll get into all that, right? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? We'll get into that. First, I
Yeah.
got a really hard question for you.
Oh yeah, we
Uh,
got to hit
we
some hard ones
there's a
first.
couple of questions we're going to try to not do is make this as interviewy as possible. I don't know if you watch the show. It's really just to talk amongst friends, but there are certain questions that are going to come off interviewy. This first one is the most important one
Mm,
of them all, so I need you to think real hard before you answer this, because
yeah.
this sets the trajectory for the rest of your career from here
And
on
we
out.
apologize. We apologize before we
Yeah,
ask.
so if this goes left, I'm sorry, but what what is your bucket list food?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll be honest with you. Like home cooking, like straight
Oh,
up, like I don't think I could ever do without chicken curry.
Oh, you done? We
And
good. You're right.
to be fair, like roti, like that's like my thing. Like, you know, it's
That's
I
it.
could see
Interview
how
over.
it would be like hamburgers for a lot of people, and I love hamburgers. That's
Oh, they're great.
definitely in my top 5 foods. But I think it's like that thing that reminds you of home, and when you need comfort and that, it's always Caribbean food for me. And I don't know if I could do without a chicken curry, like my mom's chicken curry. You know,
That's the
You
best.
need, you need that.
That's
You
the
need that
best.
Chicken
ratatouille
curry.
moment.
yeah.
You need whatever gives you that ratatouille moment where when you take that bite, you're transported back to like when you were 7, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I just out of curiosity, since we were on this real quick, is there a curry poutine?
Well, I mean, no. I mean, there is if you're doing like a take on poutine. So in Buffalo, actually, there's a great they have a tiki chicken masala
Okay,
poutine.
yeah.
So, which, you know, is not traditionally poutine. It's got all the poutine stuff in it, but then they throw chicken tikka masala on top, which is great. It's fine. I mean, I
right.
feel like poutine goes with everything, kind of. It's weird. It's
Yeah, as long as you get the basic essentials in.
I mean,
what about you,
poutine-
Marcus? You know anybody who's out there making a
I mean,
curry?
I have seen it. I've seen butter chicken poutine.
Okay.
All basically everything you could do with sauce.
Yeah,
Is
Right.
exactly.
And you know, my girlfriend's French Canadian, so she's about poutine. Like I
we couldn't
don't
tell
really
from that
mess with
name.
it that often, but yeah. Yeah.
All right. So, boys, what about y'all? What was your food of the week? Can't have the bucket list, obviously, because we've done this for a year now. So, what was your food of the week?
Oh man! So last night, I gotta admit, I killed the dinner game last night.
You cooked.
killed.
I did. Well, I mean, you know,
shit, you said
I actually
killed
cooked
too,
more
yeah.
than the functional dinner. Right now, I
All
mentioned, I think I mentioned it in conversation earlier this week, but I made those quote unquote Asian nachos, like the ones they have at the Grand Lux Cafe in Vegas.
With the wonton
And-
joints?
Yeah, with the fried wonton wrappers and the chicken and the cheese and the
Okay.
peanut sauce.
Look at you.
And then I also did a killer stir fry, which came out really good. And I always put pineapple in my stir fry. And the sauce came out like
That's
perfect this
Canadian.
time.
That's all Canadian.
That's
right
not
there.
necessarily true.
That's all
Pineapples, first of
Canadian.
all, I put
No,
pineapples.
that's a Thai thing. That's a Thai thing.
It is a Thai thing for sure. You can't hate.
I don't
You
know what
hate
y'all
on
talking about.
pineapples. Who hates on pineapples?
I don't know. I don't know
man?
what y'all talking about.
I didn't
love
say
pineapples,
put it in
but-
roti. We just said put it in the stir
What?
fry.
I
That's
know.
not. I'm saying
God.
don't put it in the roti. Keep pineapples far away from my curry. But in some stir fry, absolutely, or in my Thai curry. Like that's the jam.
What's your background, Armani?
I'm Guyanese actually.
Yeah,
Oh,
Guyanese to
Chinese
say.
crew, right? All
Yeah,
three.
bro.
Oh Lord, Bono, you Bono,
And there's
Scotty.
Italian.
So you know, you guys know the those secret ingredients that go in the curry on top
Yeah.
of the curry. Yeah, that's great.
For sure.
Yeah, Guyanese
Nope.
curry, like if you
Yeah,
get authentic Guyanese curry. It's
It's
like
different.
this is some
Yeah.
just some gingers in there as well.
That's when
yeah.
you gotta wash your hands with salt afterwards. You get the, you know what I mean. Think
Yeah.
nails walking around with yellow for a couple of days. Like, that's
There's
the
a lot of
jam.
Guyanese crew though. It's like Bailey, Frost,
Frost
Yeah,
as
man.
well.
DJ Ron.
Yeah, Ron, DJ Ron is got. That's right.
Yeah,
Oh,
many of us, right?
DJ Ron would be an interesting conversation, actually. We should keep him in mind. for
Oh
something.
yeah,
Alright, we'll do that.
he would.
Listen, we've had Bailey twice and we've had Frost, so
What about you, Track? What was your food of the week, man?
Ah man, it happened today, and it was a simple, classic, old American burgers and franks.
Okay.
And I'm not even bullshitting you, yo. I ate hot dogs without all the trimmings on it because the hot dogs themselves were good. And I haven't ate this stuff in a while, so it was like a sort of like, damn, this actually still this is. I don't know. Maybe it was the brand.
hold
they
up. Was it a hot dog from the grill?
It was on the grill.
Oh,
Came from the grill.
any man, you can have even the worst hot dog. If you have it on the grill,
Yeah.
that's
I think it was like Hebrew National, if I'm not mistaken, but whatever
I
it
don't
was,
like
it was
those.
like
But
you don't like the Nationals?
I don't like the Hebrew
Armani Rain is now
Nationals, I'm sorry.
canceled. He's anti-Semitic.
I guess the
Whoa,
buns were like
whoa.
sort of.
I didn't say do anything to the hot dogs. I said I just.
But I don't know if that's what it was because it was not the get. All right, so now I might. It was a bigger Frank and then a smaller Frank. So you
See, we
know,
wasn't even gonna say.
yeah,
that,
I was
dog.
just trying not to.
It's 2021. Speak your
trying
truth.
to slightly not to not say it in such a way.
Speak your truth.
Anyway, my bad. I'm sorry. I actually the wife made vegetarian chili, so I got down on some of that. We made some beets as well. We've had a couple things, but if I went through, I don't know which one I would pick. But her vegetarian chili was the highlight of the week so far. We've actually done 3 episodes this week, so it's kind of hard to pick. Like 2 days ago, yeah.
What do you use it for protein? Is it the
A vegetarian beef, actually.
The beans?
do you remember the brand of it?
I was gonna say the beans are protein, you know.
I didn't make this. Yeah, no, the beans. But no, there was yes, the beans are protein. Obviously, there was some beans in there, but she did have some vegetarian meat as well, with corn. I didn't make it, so I don't know her secret recipe. I can't. I can't elaborate. She ain't telling you nothing. Nah, I was in the middle of watching a movie. I was just grubbing and enjoying. I can't really be like killing it. It's not like I was thinking, is that? No, we wasn't doing that. Anyway, now that we've got that out of the way, I hope you all had a good time. We'll see you next week.
All about the food, and that's it.
Yeah, that was it. We just need to get through that issue right there. But no, man, look, I came to T-Dot in 2004, maybe.
You theory party? Theory is, yeah.
Yeah. I walked into this place they called the government, and I was like, like this is a super club, and I was like, what you talking about? And I walked into this wonderful building, and ever since then I met you and Jose and all the people from way back when. You have been not only a legend in the scene, but an absolute wonderful person to be around regularly. You're always so happy, into the music, absolutely killing it. And we are here to just say thank you for that, number one. And let's find out, where did this start? You said you've been DJing from the 80s. We know many levels of Marcus Visionary. When did this
we've seen the pictures, Marcus. We've seen those overalls, the one strap. We know what's going on.
I mean go ahead. Go on, sorry.
No,
I was gonna say, you guys grew up in a Guyanese household, so you already know this. It's just music,
right,
constantly. And my family was one of the first here, so we sponsored all of our family. And we have generations here because of my mom and dad.
Bro, you just touched the nerve, but we'll talk about that a whole nother time. It's just that I could have been Canadian, but whatever. But we'll get into that. There's a long story.
I could have been a New Yorker.
Right. Yeah. It's just a really weird story about, like, I'm guessing your family came up to Canada around the same time my families were also headed into Canada, Toronto side. So whatever. But yeah, I'm sorry. That was just a little, touched the nerve. Yeah.
When the Queen left Guyana, things got real sticky. It was very independent. And my family's mixed. My mom's Portuguese, so she's, in Guyana, that's white. And then my dad is Black and Indian, so he's mixed. But
clash as well.
It was sort of like one of these things where the political parties were taking over, and they were like, vote one way or the other. And it was getting really kind of violent and sticky at that time. And my parents, the Queen had said, we're going to give you 3 options. You can leave. And so my parents applied for Canada, UK, and New York. And New York came through first. So they lived on Fulton Street in the city for a long time. And could you imagine, like, my dad's Black and my mom's white, right in the middle of the 60s.
Like Bed-Stuy area time, I'm guessing, huh?
Yeah, and so my mom had a special experience there. You know what I mean? Because, like, they were when you come and you don't have a lot of money and you're in New York City. But my dad loved New York, and he still sort of has a New York accent after all these years. Like, he really loved New York City. So, they eventually, you apply to different places, and they got accepted into Canada. So they were like, whoever's going to accept us first, we're going to go. So I could have actually ended up in England as well.
Wow.
As soon as they got to Canada, I was born,
Right. So they stayed there. Yeah, because that's where most of my family did the same exact thing. They actually moved right outside of New York, like Teaneck, New Jersey area, UK, and I don't know if there's anybody in Canada. I believe it was mostly UK and New York area.
Yeah.
And so it seemed to be like the common theme, apparently.
Yeah,
So a lot of it had to do with schools as well,
a lot of schools,
the education system.
Yeah, but it's you know I can kind of say that I wasn't as in depth about the full on history of what exactly happened to make families, but I know that my grandfather, who's still alive with us now, I think he should be turning 100 this year. He was part of the military. My father was like this track star for GT, and they were pretty much at their high time, thinking about somewhere in the 70s to like go this way. But turns out that my grandfather went, and all my father's family followed, and my father pit stopped in New York, and so I was conceived at that time into New York, knowing that. But it took a while before I actually got to Canada, until around the time I started meeting you guys. Actually, now that I think about it.
Crazy.
So it's mom's, when she was here, she has an uncle up there, and I never see my mom's turn into a 12-year-old. You know what I'm saying? So there's all these things that are crazy. Like there's third generation families up there now for me. So
yeah. So your family sponsored everyone else, eh? So you were born there, so you're born and raised in T-Dot, or specifically, or where?
Yeah, in Toronto. So I grew up in East Scarborough in my early years.
Scarborough.
Yeah, which is just east of Toronto, right?
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
It's infamous, they have their own lingo and talk. I left when all of that was developing, but because I ended up downtown, I started working co-op at record shops downtown during high school. So I got downtown as quick as I could, because all of the clubs and the nightlife and the real good stuff was happening downtown.
For sure.
But the hood people were in Scarborough.
So it remains the hood from what I heard. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's still
it's still tough out there.
So you had all the music in the household and everything. When was it that you kind of what was like the first piece of music that you kind of discovered for yourself? Like you discovered on your own? It wasn't your parents' music necessarily. It was like, it wasn't any siblings. You discovered it, and it was yours, and it was your first. Oh shit.
Well, the real truth behind that is my parents' music was my music. That's the truth.
That's good.
Like,
okay.
Growing up, like, because I liked so much of it. But I remember distinctly, my parents came home. I think it was '79, right? And they had a copy of Rapper's Delight, a 12-inch single.
Oh my God!
Okay.
This is
I have a couple of them here, but they brought that. I learned every line of that because I was like, how old was I? So I was like 9 or like little kid, So and the wiki rap,
Right.
Yeah. So I was right into it, man. Right. Hip hop right from the beginning.
Right there.
Yeah. And the electro stuff was happening, and I was sad when the electro stuff stopped, like
right.
after, like, because I really loved it. To me, I look back on that sound was like drum and bass and jungle. Like it was so forward, heavy production. If you listen to those records, the things that they were doing were incredible. Like Looking for a Perfect Beat. Oh my God. Even the dub sides are incredible. Like if you listen to the dubs, those guys were doing on the dub sides what like King Tubby and those guys were doing. They were just affecting things, and it's amazing.
Experimentation, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Auto noise.
Really pushing the analog as far as you could take it.
Yeah.
When did you get into DJing for the first time?
Well, you see, that's another thing. I was kind of surrounded by it because I had cousins and uncles, and everybody sort of like music was so much more important, I think, back in like in the 80s, like all through the 80s and even the 90s. I think to families, music was just so much more important. At least for my family, it was like the glue, there wasn't anything you did without music being a central thing. And so when my mom and dad had parties on the weekend, my cousins, everybody would just bring their speakers. They bring their little homemade amplifiers, wire it all up, put a speaker in every corner. Cause like those old school speakers, those like,
right. The big giant
Yeah,
They were
the
just stuck in the
wood
corner.
ones.
Yeah, the shelves.
But
They were shelves actually.
but if you
And
put them in the
tables.
corner, it sounds really good, right? Because you
Absolutely.
get the reverberation. And
Right.
man, I mean, so I was supposed to be in bed a lot of the time. They always send me to bed, but I would come down halfway, and I mean everything they were playing was what, that's the thing. When dance music was first starting, there was only one dance music. True. At one point my parents were really hip, straight up.
That's dope.
So when did Marcus become a DJ in the rave scene then? Let's go.
Oh.
Let's take it there.
Well, I mean, I was part of a hip hop group like called R&R, and I performed at like Live at the Barbecue, and I used to
DJing or
breakdance.
rap? Were you rapping?
I was a DJ.
Okay, I was making sure. I was like, I need to know where these Marcus Visionary bars are. Like, you know what I mean?
No bars.
He's
I
out
didn't
there
have
battling cats.
I wasn't blessed with the voice for that, but I was into the DJing thing. See, my babysitters from across the street, there were these guys named Peter and Chris. They were DJs, and so they were like 16. I was literally like 6, 7, 8 years old. They were taking care of me, and they used to take me to the roller rink, and they'd get if I was with them, and you have a cute kid with you, you're gonna get girls, right? It's like carrying around a puppy.
Right? Pretty much.
I got to experience a lot of really cool things, and going to the roller rink and hearing all the not too deep and George Clinton and all the roller skating jams, and funk was a really big part of my life. And I know you guys are older as well, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people forget that when funk was such a huge thing, it was kind of like hip hop and funk. It was like,
that was it.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, look, I part of the reason that hip hop even like came about was the fact that the generation that was playing funk and stuff like that before, the kids all of a sudden were deprived of music programs, musical instruments in schools. They were cutting music budgets and art budgets in schools.
Right.
And it literally did become people making something out of nothing. So there is like, it's not just a musical DNA, it's a DNA of circumstance. And yeah, I mean, the two overlapped so much, but part of the reason that hip hop even came about was because of funk. And now that those same people, that the next generation of the same people that were making funk all of a sudden don't have those resources anymore.
And the irony of that is what kind of, I might be saying it too layman, but it's the idea that hip hop kind of started from listening to your parents' records. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Yeah.
KC and the Sunshine Band, Kool and the Gang, Gap Band, Earth, Wind and Fire. You can go through them, and they were all like you was talking about. Rapper's Delight and Irony was my first hip hop record, and I still remember my mother's signature written within the scribble on the label to let it be known that it was hers. And it's just wild. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, that was all just DJs again, taking something, making it out of nothing, cutting up these tunes, flipping them a different way, adding an MC to it to hype up the party, and then one thing evolved into the next. You know what I mean? Like, but it was all funk records. It was all funk and Motown. Just
yeah, because there was a time like if you listen to like Red Alert and all that, there just wasn't enough hip hop. Like,
right.
And so they were being creative with whatever they were, like cutting up Thomas Dolby and
that was a funky record.
Remember, Another One Bites the Dust was a big hip hop record.
Huge.
Huge. Mercury he ran things.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people never heard the lyrics, but they heard that beat, right? The intro, right?
They sampled that that was the whole thing, right? They'd find the break in the sample, cut that up, and then we just sample it, run it over again, and just layer it. Like, I mean, to this day, I still love sampled hip hop to this day. I think it's, it's an art form that I think has become definitely for the artisans of the groups. You know what I mean? It's not easy to do. First you got to crate dig in the first place, even when that was a thing. So. How was it with you? Were you the crate digging Marcus Visionary? I see that plethora of fantasticness behind you.
My house is too small for my love. I'm telling you.
I feel
yeah, because if I could, I would have a funk and boogie and disco collection. Like,
right.
I mean, going to New York is punishment. Like some of the record shops. I'll go and I'll start digging, and like as you said, like Gap Band, Daz Band, I want all
Right.
those records. Like, you know, I mean, I grew up listening to them. I mean, so much amazing funk, you know, but just can't. You know, you need a full basement in the house to really
Oh, yeah.
delve in, and you're talking about, you know, $20,000-$30,000 probably just to satisfy your, you know, like
Yeah.
for real.
The taste for
just being
acetate.
real.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
get it.
So you went from R. So you went from R&R, your hip hop group, right? So where did it go from there?
Well, yeah. So the hip hop thing was like where I cut my teeth, because all my friends, we were all into DJing and breakdancing, and you know, you're a kid, you have nothing to do. So I was never into sports. I never got into video games. Like, although my friends were into that stuff, I just wasn't one of those guys. I was like, this is it. This is what is exciting, you know? So while everybody was like, you know, basement parties or whatever, make it out, I'm DJing. I was DJing. I didn't care about,
Setting the tone.
like, I did play sports. I did play, 'cause, you know, we played basketball, and I was always out, you know, exercising and stuff with my friends. But after that, my hobby was 100%, and I'm talking like from 6 to 10 years old. Like the bug caught me. It was just music.
Early.
Yeah, like my mom would be like, if she had to go to like Zellers or something, she'd leave me in the stereo section. You know, like it's real silly things, but I look back on it and I laugh. I was just something about, you know, equipment and music. It was like magic to me when I was very young. And so by the
explains a lot. Explains a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. And by the time I was 10 and I was hanging out with these older guys, and they were deep into it. They were great DJs. You know, I learned from them.
Was
And
there?
then
I'm sorry for cutting you off.
no worries.
I was going to ask, was there like a sound system culture in Toronto?
Yeah, I mean, we had a big Caribbean. We have a huge Caribbean population here.
Still.
Of course.
Yeah, we have a little Jamaica, and
Right.
I mean, but it's just, you know, very, very multicultural. Like, I mean, and that's the thing. My friends growing up were Trinidadian, Jamaican, Barbadian, you know, Dominican, you know, like everything. It's sort of like New York City, and
Just
I
bigger.
think that's why, like with especially Toronto, we really, when I saw what was happening in London, you know, and me being mixed race and everything, and seeing people like myself and hearing the sound, I was like, this is for me. It's got hip hop, it's got sound system.
Talk
like,
about it.
and early jungle records, this is one of the things I was thinking about the other day. What made me fall in love with it was, especially those early records, it was like it had everything in it.
Amen.
It didn't need anything else. It had pads, it had a rare groove sample, it had a reggae part, like I had clash effects, like, you know, because now people put the clash effects in.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to some of the early jungle stuff, it literally, there was no space for anything else.
No.
They were such complete works of art, you know, 5 to 7 minutes long, you know,
Long tunes. Yeah.
Long tunes.
And they were so hyped because of that, because all the stuff that you guys put in as MCs were in the songs. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
So
It is funny because even as a late bloomer, like when I got in, you could feel how much of the history. And people say that, they're like, "What do you love about drum and bass?" Like, and I was like, "Man, like first of all, anybody can get down to this because there's whatever genre you love, there's a part of that in here somewhere. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, there's no matter where you're from, there's something here for you, and it's so accepting and allowing you to be. It was the most inclusive community I had ever experienced before. And then it had that energy on top of it when you started getting deeper in it. And I was like, I don't think there's a rawness that I felt from anything else. I am a hip hop head, like, you know what I'm saying? But I had to explain to people, like, if you took hip hop and rock, and if you took the culture of hip hop and the energy of rock and roll, and then put in like the vibe and influence of reggae, there you go. It was like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't match that anywhere else. And then as you got older, you realize the science of it all, which is what I'm fascinated by now. You know, it's just like what goes into even creating these tunes is a whole different level of things. When it was like an immediate fascination for you, right?
yeah, I mean, even now, like I'm a nerd when it comes to, like, there's very few interviews I haven't seen, like whether it's like people like Ninth Wonder and
Ah,
I mean, I study all of that. And even now I'm starting to get into like including that in the production. I mean, uh liquid soulful drum and bass, you could actually, if you really wanted to, do exactly what Ninth Wonder is doing, but in drum and bass.
oh
You know,
God.
and
I've been saying this
a lot of
for
people are doing
years,
that,
and
you know. Yeah,
dude,
you could
although
I will
say,
know?
Will Miles does
Oh, shouts to
a
Will
very
Miles.
good job of being a very Ninth
Shouts to Will
Wonder-esque producer on his liquid stuff. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, so those techniques, you can include them. Obviously, like I grew up on dub music, and Yellow Man was a big thing. You
Yes.
know, I mean,
Of
and
course.
Yellow Man, he what was amazing about him was the stuff that he chose to ride when he was in his early days, when he became big. That
Mhm.
was the best dub music. You know, he used
Mhm.
all the best rhythms, and
Yeah.
and so I've studied that like big time, like all the players, Channel One sound, King Jammy, everything. Like that's my DNA, you know. So understanding dub techniques, and then you know what happened in hip hop, and then I got into techno because basically mid '80s house started to come
Yeah.
in through
That's right.
Chicago, and
Right, for sure.
if you played any party, right, in the mid '80s, you had to play everything,
Mhm.
right? You couldn't not play. Like, so if a big record was a big record.
Yep.
So
Right.
when Move Your Body came in, like, you know, Marshall Jefferson,
Boom,
Yep.
boom, boom, boom.
it changed the game. And then even Jungle Brothers were so smart to I'll house you. They
I'll
jumped on
house
it with
you.
that, right?
Murdered.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
you had to play
They were
everything.
they were legendary, man. It was funny how much Jungle Brothers I listened to before I even knew what that stuff was. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like how much influence that had. So like even when I finally got into drum and bass, it was just like, holy shit, I've been listening to this the whole time. You know what I mean? It was just wild.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So actually want to ask you, you know, you're a unique figure in North America, because drum and bass and jungle in Toronto goes back further than it does in the States.
Sure.
It goes back to the direct roots. And I would argue actually that drum and bass in the States came about via a detour through like Timeless and Platinum Breaks. I think like the overall influence on drum and bass in the States came from a slightly more futurist, techie kind of background. Whereas in Toronto, the jungle roots in Toronto are still flagrantly on display at any party you go to. But you, however, are probably like the earliest active soldier in Toronto. Like you were still in it, like, I mean, hard. I'd say maybe you and Lush are probably the veterans that go back the furthest that are still doing it on a day-to-day basis. So without Toronto, jungle and drum and bass in North America would not have taken hold the way it did. So talk about like the advent of jungle and how it hit Toronto, like how and when, and where you were positioned in that whole mix, because this is dealing in a time where a lot of people who are listening to drum and bass right now, a lot of people go out to parties right now, they're not quite aware of that particular time period in Toronto's history.
Right. Well, you know, we had a warehouse scene because we had house music. Because once house music hit, it caught on here.
Mhm.
And once again, it was black and gay, you know, it really was. It was
Right.
people of color. It really represented Toronto. So all the same people, like, and their parents were from Trinidad, Guyana, you know. And so around 88, in the acid house thing was happening in the UK. Our scene was soulful house. You know, so those records would get played. We didn't have an acid house explosion here in Toronto, but they were played at our warehouse parties. But you would hear like an acid house record and then right back into soulful stuff. So our scene was more of like a garage oriented US soulful scene, and we would go to those parties. Like, that's the thing too. A lot of people think, you know, we just did one thing. So we were heavily into hip hop, but we would go to warehouse parties, you know, and the warehouse parties is like people dressed up, like, you know, and we have a whole host of DJs here that are like really famous. They're still doing it, and you know, they have labels. And because remember, Detroit was just, it's 4 hours away, right?
Yeah, right across the way.
Buffalo's an hour away, right? So I'm gonna skip things over. So we had the house thing, and then we used to get UK imports because I used to work at a record store. I think I started at Carnival Records first.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Carnival. Wow. Carnival Records.
Yeah, in the late 80s, because I was still in high
I
school.
love Toronto so much.
And then played a record open, and I went over there when they opened, right?
Okay.
Most of our workers, we went over there. So we would get the UK imports, and the thing is, sometimes the UK presses were just louder and better and fatter. They were just repressing some stuff from the US, right?
Mhm.
But we started to so the techno stuff that we were hearing, like Kevin Saunderson, Derek May, obviously we're getting all of that because it's Detroit's 4 hours away, right? And we were playing it in our house sets, you know, at house party, like where we play everything. You play Tribe Called Quest, and then there's a section where you're gonna hear Bang Bang Your Mind, and you know, like everything got played, right? So the bleep techno started coming from the UK, and that's what changed everything. Like when LFO hit, it was like
Done.
because the thing is, what I think people don't realize is that bass was so heavy. All of the people from a Caribbean background were like, that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Right? And all of the bleep stuff was just like sub bass, right? And within a year, like the hardcore stuff, so they were putting hip hop at that time, it literally just sounded like hip house with heavy bass, you know, right? Because the hip house thing was happening, and the guys were rapping. You know, you guys being American, you remember that? Yeah,
Tony Love,
Fast Eddie, right?
Yeah, Fast Eddie, King Son.
Yeah. So you know, and then before it just happened so quickly. Like by '91, the first rave started to happen, and our scene in Toronto, I don't know why this happened really particularly, but there were so many people who I guess got inspired by hardcore that companies just blew. So you had like Exodus, which is the first company, right? And then you had like Chemistry, a guy named Alex of London.
Shout out.
Here. Yeah. So then you had Nitrous, you had Atlantis, you had Infinity. I had my company Delirium, which I started in 1992, December 1992. You know, Happy Face, like endless.
Classic rave names, by the way. Like, they're so rave, you know, like White Glove Rave.
So you had Pleasure Force and Cyrus. I have to shout them out. Psychosis was another one. But I was talking to Uncle Doug's about this when I started naming off those names, because he said, fill me in. And I just started naming off. He's like, do you know that we had those same names over here?
I'm sure.
That's hysterical.
Right? And
that's hysterical.
I found Delirium in a dictionary. Right? Because I was with Medicine Muffin and Jungle PhD and his brother, and we were looking for a name for the rave company. And we were looking in a dictionary,
right?
You know? And we were like, "What about Delirium? Like, but there's a Delirium in the UK, like, you know." So
well, it's not surprising. I mean, this is a bad analogy. Okay, this is a very bad analogy. So please, this is like complete hyperbole. No. I'm saying
the views of Valued MC do not necessarily reflect
various civilizations around the world at roughly the same time that could not possibly communicate with each other conceived of pyramids as like, you know, like holy structures.
That wasn't as bad as I thought you were going to say.
I'm just saying like there is like a human symbiosis
for sure,
just like where people across the world they think of these good ideas at the same time.
You're all connected, bro. Like that was magical of you. I'm not mad at you. Good.
To add another part to that, something that may just go over people's heads. Anthony Bourdain, he kind of just showed how much foods that we eat in different countries are not that far different from each other. Beef, chicken, sauteed, grilled, boiled, whatever.
Well, the food discussion, I could, as a history teacher, I could
Right.
get way deep into that shit because there's a whole the thing. I'm not going to get into that right now. We got to talk about.
I want to continue on to this symbiosis, so to speak, because and a lot of this has already been pointing out of the large Caribbean population there and the roots tied to that and sound systems and such. It's funny, like even when I first went to Toronto, I didn't even really experience what was outside of those city walls until actually Goldie was like, "Yo, let's go get some Jamaican food," and I was like, "Where?" And we drove out for a while. I was like, "Holy shit, there's a whole nother world out here! Like this is crazy." But I reference that because that symbiosis that we're speaking of, for us in the States, as time progressed, as you started going through all this and established, we looked at Toronto as basically the second London. Like there was such a no matter what happened in the States, you guys remain pure in that feeling. And for someone who's been to over there and back and forth, and I started to realize it even more, I was like, wow, man, like you guys really kept that grounded literally to now. Like you know what I mean, like it's from the DJs to the MCs that were there, you know, the parties we did back in the day, like it kept that vibe going. And you were definitely in the middle of that. You cats like Caddy Cad, so on and so forth. Like, can we talk about a little more about that? Like you trying, I'm not saying it was an effort to do so, you guys were just being you, but
well, you know what, there was a little bit of a conscious effort because we looked at it like, I mean, they you know, you have your heroes and your icons, and you look at the music, and we kind of understood, yes, we could bring something to it, but we weren't like in the sense that we're going to take this and make it our own. Like we were like, we're going to contribute to this. Right? So we modeled ourselves, and I mean that was a conscious thing between like.
Okay, so it was a conscious thing. All right.
Myself and the couple of key DJs like Mystical, Sniper,
shout out,
Roughneck, you know, everybody was just like, we wanted to give people authentically British presentation of jungle. And but because really and truly, if you look at London and Toronto, and this was it. It was just like I saw myself. Like
it's the same.
I watch all the videos with Goldie, and like we have opposite personalities. Opposite. Like
for sure.
You know, but his experience like with b-boying and hip hop, I see myself in him a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, even like our development, everything, you know, and I've been watching all his interviews lately, and I'm just like, wow, we had just come from such a similar place, you know.
It's surprising, isn't it?
Yeah, the
Marcus,
DNA, the makeup.
Talk about the importance real quick of Dr. No, because a lot of people, especially the younger people, are not aware of how important he was.
Well, you know, the first company, Exodus, right, was a bunch of Scottish guys. So it's Mark Oliver, Sean L. There's this guy named Danny Henry, Danny Donnelly, and then Malik X and Dr. No. So Malik X and Dr. No were both two black British expats, right? And they grew up in, like, you know, if you're black in the 70s, sound system culture was everybody played on a sound, like if you were in music, you know. So these guys cut their teeth playing like reggae and dub and soul. And when they moved here, Malik X had a radio show called Radio London, and I was, you know, as a digger, I was listening to Radio London because he used to play Rare Groove. So like the first place I heard like Samande, the first time I heard Soul to Soul, or even any British soul, and he presented it in a pirate radio style. So he had all these like, amazing radio carts, like, you know, his show was, you know, called This Is London, you know. He had like the London bell at the beginning of his show, and but also too, his Jamaican heritage, the way that he presented it would come through in the show. It was infectious. Like I still use all of his catchphrases today. The first time I heard touching down at this place, and, you know, keep it locked and lock in, and all, that's all Malik.
Classic prophecy right there.
Yeah, and it passed down to Dr. No, right? So we used to go to raves to watch. This is how cool Dr. No was. For one, Dr. No, like a lot of people understand, these guys were super tall, really handsome.
Yep.
The women loved them. Dr. No was a model, you know? And so imagine this, he MC'd and DJ'd. See the British, you know, British accent, the whole, but you know, Jamaican heritage. So it's that mix of Jamaican.
One of my first tapes was him emceeing for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, why does he say yes? Like yes. Like you like yes,
it was pretty common for especially if you're more from a Caribbean that you would DJ and MC sometimes. There was a lot of mixtapes with a lot of DJs just would say a lot of stuff in between the record by themselves or whatever have you. So yeah, I'm kind of mad I missed on this a little bit though, but yeah.
Same, I'm learning.
So, you know, we learned everything from him. Like, you know, in the early, like from 91 to like 94, we would go to parties just to watch him.
Right.
Like I went to a nitrous rave because they used to play like at some of those raves when things went, some guys went progressive house and hardcore, like the real Belgian hardcore.
Right.
So, but they
like
would have Dr. No
style shit.
Yeah. And Dr. No would play for 45 minutes, and we would go watch Dr. No play, and then it would just be like, and we were like, all right, peace.
Time to go.
Time to go. And that's why we started Delirium, was because we were like, you know, and it was called, our first party was called Lost in the Jungle. And it was like, we want jungle all night long. That was our whole thing. So even
what year was that? That was 92, you said?
December 92.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because like,
Jesus, man.
A lot of people don't realize, like, I should actually do this one day. There were so many records, and I mean dozens of them that referred to jungle and junglists in 1992.
Right.
Because
There's been that big, right.
Go on.
Now I was gonna say there's always been that big thing of what came first, jungle or drum and bass? And shouts to my man Jason Jinx, who's not here with us. Jason Jinx me and Jason Jinx used to go back and forth and said, well, he was in London in 91, 92 or 90, and they came to him and says, well, you looking for some drum and bass? He says, so drum and bass came before jungle. And I'm saying, no, I'm down with Reinforce. And I know they weren't even calling things jungle at the time. They weren't even calling drum and bass at the time. So, you know, I love it. I actually think it's the term, wherever they stuck at, it's obviously somewhere between 93, 94, 95.
Look, you know what? Ray Keith said it best. He said, it's all jungle to me, mate. Like all of it. You know what I mean? And I actually agree. Like I never really know where the line, I've never really known where the line is there. I don't care.
I feel like there's a distinction now only because there, this is later in the interview, but like there's a whole revival, and like we are like that's part of my creative change. Like there's a lot of guys now. Like I just did a 160 BPM project, right? But
dude, somebody sent me something lower than normal, and I was just like, like there's definitely distinction now because of where we've gone with it. That calls in the time period, but carry on.
You know what? There's elements from jungle, right? That if you know, it's kind of like with drum and bass now, especially modern. Let's talk about really popular, like, you know, Andy C type drum and bass. Yeah. They might borrow one and two elements. Even like the stuff that I was making, like the stuff that I was making fell in this weird place because I was trying to make jungle that drum and bass people would throw in.
Oh, hold on, wait. Before we get into your music. Let's first get into how you got into making your music, and let's talk about the birth of Visionary.
The birth of Visionary.
Yeah, let's do that first, because that was was that your first foray into production? Was with Dave?
Yeah, with Dave. Yeah.
Okay, so how did that come about, and how did that disintegrate?
All right. Well, you know, as a DJ, especially this came from the hip hop days. The moment I heard hip hop, I said, I want to make music one day. And I don't read music. I don't play an instrument. But I mean,
perfect.
You can hear this music.
We're all on the same boat. Go ahead.
Yeah. And you can hear, like, you know, I mean, especially Run DMC. a few of their first tracks didn't even have a bass line, had no melody. It was a
No.
drum, just a drum beat, right?
And murdered it.
Yeah, and it was that DIY thing that I tapped into, and I was like, seeing all these producers, I realized I could do this one day. I just need to focus on it. But I became a promoter, big time.
Right.
Like, Theory is one of the things I did with Jose, and I mean, I've got endless companies that I was part of, because you get caught up in like you have. That's the thing about this year, it gives you time to focus on your creativity. But
right,
for the last 30 years, I've had to hustle by promoting. Throwing parties to survive was my, part of my life.
So where did Dave enter the picture with you?
So I met Dave in the rave scene, and we started messing around in the studio in 1995. And just learning, because back then it was getting the equipment, and we started buying samplers like Kai samplers. We had an Emu, we had a Kurzweil KT1000, a Juno, all the stuff that you would need. And we started dabbling, because once again I was DJing a lot. So the thing is like, it was balancing it. It was like earning enough money to pay your rent, pay your bills, and then you get in the studio, right? So I never made it. I didn't make it producing. Even though we dabbled and we did do quite a bit of music, it didn't become a real priority for me until about 2004. Like where I said, I'm getting older now. If I'm going to do this, because I think I was about 33, 34.
Right.
And I was like, I need to focus and really like because I had done so many shows and like production things. I was like, I need to balance it so that I could otherwise I'm never gonna make music,
Was it a tipping point for you as well? Like, was it, if I don't produce music, this might go a different way? Did you feel like you needed to do that?
Well,
or is it more of just like you didn't want to lose that thing that you had set on and dreamed about?
I am glad, actually, I think it was a coincidence. I am glad that it was part of me wanting to become a producer, because there did come a point where, and I think I got into that window where if you didn't, that you were just a J, your life was going to get really hard.
Right.
Real, and I have friends, and and I feel for
we all
them,
do,
because they're great DJs. They're great DJs. There are a lot of great DJs, and we see it, right? Because like we can name maybe 2 or 3 great DJs from England who are really popular, right? Like just DJ,
right?
Like everybody, there was a time where you had to produce, and if you were gonna travel or see outside of your city, you had to produce. And so I think I was really happy that I got into that window. It was like 2005 when I met Shy. He was coming over for our parties, and
Shy.
I met Marcus Intellects. And Bailey is actually one of the guys who gave my music to these guys. And
now is this music that you had done with Dave as Visionary, or is this after you had split and you became Marcus Visionary?
No, the first few tunes I did with Dave, yeah.
Because just to clarify for anyone watching, Marcus Visionary was known just as Marcus for a very long time until Visionary came about. So the stuff that was being handed off to Shy, was this stuff with Dave initially, or was it just your stuff?
Yeah, the stuff initially was with Dave.
Okay.
It was the first few tunes. Like, a couple of them I made. It gets really sticky, because at that time,
by all means,
at that time the studio ended up in my house, because for about 10 years we had a studio outside of the house. Like, I used to rent a studio space, and like we had maybe 3 different locations, and I stayed at a few. I can't believe I used to pay 2 rents, 2 phone bills. Like it's insane. But I look back at that and I think that was kind of. But that's what you
had to do that. Yeah, you had to.
It was a learning.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
it's part of the journey.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it's insane to think that I used to pay. I could have saved all that money.
Yeah, for sure. We've all got those stories, unfortunately.
So Shy was the really the first person to really put you guys on, because he signed you with Digital Soundboy. Am I correct?
Yeah. So before
Okay.
that, like in
Ooh.
before that, we had signed with tracks to L Double for Flex.
Oh, I'm okay. I
Shout out
remember
L
that. I
Double,
remember
man.
this.
L Dubs.
Yeah, we'd done 2 singles locally for Vinyl Syndicate, which was the local label.
Right.
And then we had a couple of our own little labels that we would press up stuff. Like Visionary Recordings was like short-lived and X-rated. But
X-rated.
basically, when I got really serious, we made "Give Me Your Love" and
Hey.
that number 9 dub. And the funny part about it is Bailey had given it to those guys. They played it at Swerve. So the next day, imagine this. I'm sitting in my house, Marcus Intellect's ring. He's like, "Yo, I heard number 9 dub at Swerve last night. I want to sign it." I'm like, "Bang, it's yours." So I gave that. Right?
Please take it.
Yeah. An hour and a half later, Shy calls. "I heard these 2 tunes at Swerve last night. I want them." And I was like, and the one he wanted was number 9 dub. And I was like, you know what? I just signed that to Marcus Intellects. And he was like, oh, he was like, what else you got? Because here's the thing, like back then, I guess that dubwise sound, jungle wasn't really a thing when we started doing that again. Like you had like Digital, Total Science, Breakage, Potential Bad Boy. I can name the guys that were doing jungle influence stuff at that time. And obviously Benny Page had just come back about around there. And we all had a real similarity in our stuff because what it was we were jungle guys and drum and bass was just this like, you know, huge thing. And there was not a lot of jungle influence in it. So when those guys went down to the club and they were like, it's like you heard like maybe 4 or 5 songs that sounded like that in the whole night. Wow. So it was like, that's how they noticed it because it was just nothing like that happening at the time, right? And they tapped into it, and then I made Diary of a Digital Soundboy in 2005, which is like probably one of the most iconic,
high end, one of my most favorite albums.
Yeah,
absolutely,
definitely.
So,
wow.
So what was the changeover to the more solo stuff?
Basically, what happened was once I'd moved the studio into my house, Davis started coming less and less because, you know, he was a recording engineer and he had a day job. Right. So I was just, what it was I was just making music a lot more. And Shy was just like, you need to do, he was really encouraging me to be solo. Not that he didn't like Dave or anything.
That's totally what it was. No, I'm just kidding.
He was just sort of like, you're like me. He's like, what I do is I produce music. And when I need people to play on it, like whether it's a bass player or a keyboard player, I hired them to come in. If I need vocals, I will just, and he told me how to do it. He was just like, you know, I pay people or I'll do a trade, you know, like I'll get Dizzy Rascal to come in and then I'll do a mix for his album.
Right.
You know, and so he kind of said to me, he was like, you know, you're making all of these records on your own now. This is how you should go about it. And that's really how my solo thing started to happen. And as things do, you drift from people over time. Like, you know, it became like he would come in once every 3 months, then it was once every 6 months, and then before I know it, it wasn't happening anymore. But yeah, it was sort of like a really natural, you know, split.
Right.
Peaceful.
So you mentioned how you have obviously sort of evolved with the times. There was a point in time where Marcus Visionary tunes had a very soulful edge to them. And then, you know, nowadays, and you mentioned it earlier, you were very known for the sort of like modern revival of jungle. And
thank you, by the way.
Actually put a lot of focus on your affiliation with Liondub Recordings and your own record labels. And I'm wondering if there was a concerted effort to sort of really focus on your own shit and your own like platforms of release, as opposed to trying to hustle and get your tunes out on other labels. Was there a point where you decided that you were better served focusing on your own labels?
I think that was always the goal, you know what I mean? Because you want to become your own man, and things have changed now a lot, you know. And I still have releases that come out here and there on different labels. Like I just had something come out on the Formation
right, yeah.
album.
Right.
I've done I did something that came out on Chronic a long time ago, and but for the most part, it's like, you got to build your own house, man. You really have to start building your own empire. And we have Inner City Dance, which is sort of an umbrella label, and then I started last year Stereo One Music, which is my jungle label, focusing on jungle. But yeah, I always feel like it's sticky when you're sending music out to people, man. It's like I'm a grown man now too,
Right.
so it's kind of like it almost feels like you're begging it a little bit for me.
No, for sure.
Especially now that I know how the business works.
Right.
I can put together like a whole advertising for something and put it out. And so a lot of the time it's a lot of like, let's just do this on our own. Like that's really what it comes down to. Not that I don't respect all of these, and if someone says to me,
sure.
is that song available and it's reinforced, or it's Brian G or people that I really respect and it's free, I'll say, yeah, it's free. Let's work together. Let's do something. But it just hasn't happened. I've been really stockpiling music right now for, because I'm just looking at the pandemic and, trying to position myself so that when we come out of this, for one, I know it's going to be a real crabs in the barrel game.
Oh man.
Woo! I want to sit back for 6 months and just watch.
Let it happen. Yeah. Let the fallout. Let's see what happens with the fallout. There's something in all this, and even in your conscious effort now that you've had time during the pandemic to catch up, focus back on the creativity. For a lot of your fans, supporters, people who've known you for years, the work you've put in behind the scenes, I remember, I don't know if you're aware of this, I'm sure you're aware of this, or want to speak on it. There was a time where the underground scene was very vocal about how you weren't getting your just dues and how we were all screaming from the rooftops that needed to happen. And around that time, I felt like you had pushed even further than you already were. So to hear you saying that now too and watching it all come to fruition, do you remember that time? Do you remember making a conscious effort, or at least hearing the murmurs and saying, yeah, no, I'm going to make sure I step in front of this, so to speak?
I'm really happy. Like there's a lot of people who like kind of spoke up for me, especially with the return of jungle. Like, because like that was something that we were really invested in. Like, in a few of us, like Potential Bad Boy is probably the quietest person, and this guy doesn't. He's one of the people that doesn't get his flowers at all.
Sneaks in and out every time, bro.
Not only like he was one of the inventors of jungle and drum and bass.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say inventors, like he was sampling off James Brown records. Like he didn't go and get him. Now I have endless sample CDs,
right?
Processed breaks, like the what you can get nowadays to produce is just incredible. And of course, use those tools, use those technologies. But Potential Bad Boy, like he was doing stuff on Ibiza and even Rebel MC, to be honest with you, because Rebel MC, he was like in '88, he was making stuff that was, you could arguably say that's jungle.
Oh, for sure.
Like absolutely. Years before the word
was a thing.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't know, because I think history is one of those really touchy things for some reason, man. Like I don't know why we don't want to give people that celebrate, you know what I mean? So
I don't understand it either. I always thought it was weird, especially I thought it was weird in this culture in particular because of the way that I came into it and the way I felt the inclusiveness, and like to find that, and I'm trying not to deviate into rough waters here on what's wrong with it. Not just that, because I've also felt like within the last couple of years we've stepped out of that, and a lot of people like yourself and I, we don't really think about those things anymore because it doesn't concern us. We're about moving forward. So going back to it is kind of like what we don't want to do.
Right.
But I will say that I agree with you in that aspect. I think it's very weird that it's so tough to get the flowers that everyone needs and deserves, for all those who have been putting blood, sweat, and tears into this scene, into this culture for years to come.
I think it starts with kind of like what you guys are doing though, because like it's outlets like these. Basically, drum and bass and jungle at being an underground thing has never really been an industry, if you think about it. Like, so there are people out there, and let's talk about like the really big booking agencies and promotion companies who, for them, like Ultra is like a wet dream in Las Vegas, and just trying to make it as big as right. And so they're trying to create an industry, but what happens in this massive thing is all of the underground gets dwarfed.
For sure.
Right? Gets forgotten almost, to be honest.
Yeah. And like, Andy C, for example, and I know you work with Andy all the time because we booked you. But
Thank you.
He I mean, I was trying to tell people how big he is, like, you know what I mean? And so you've got all these segments and even now, man, there's a split. People don't even realize there's a real split in the scene happening right now.
Sure.
People don't even realize, because there's all of these original producers have come back and set their labels up. Like, I mean, a lot.
No, it's true.
And
that's true.
And they're making a lot of music, like Overshadow, which is basically Moving Shadow. All of the artists. Right. You got Nookie, you got Mark Ranger.
Yeah, it's nice to see Nookie coming back. I was excited about that.
It's crazy, but when I say split, I don't mean it in a bad way.
No.
Because jungle drum and bass every once in a while will change, and you'll be like, what is that? That's and sometimes it takes a minute to get your head around it. Like for me,
it's like the essence of it, though. I feel like that's the essence of it once you learn it. You know what I mean? That doesn't, normal people don't see that unless you've been in it. You know what I mean? They don't see those changes. So a lot of people will write it off as like, oh man, that tune got old quick. And it's like, no, you're just watching the innovation happen. That's how, you know what I mean?
Right. Or just the fact, like let's just say, for example, Minimal. No, I had no idea that Minimal will become as big as it did during its time. I was like walking like, oh, this is cool. Then, oh, this is cool. Then, oh, this is the guy that made this. And then it's this one vibe that I was like, yo, I didn't think this would work, but it absolutely does right now. And we've got, I enjoy all these diverse moments that just like all lead to something else.
Amen.
If we're talking about flowers, though, like, it's weird, who are we talking about getting flowers from? And if we're looking at like the overall greater drum and bass establishment, a lot of these people are getting forgotten. Now, I'm not quiet about the fact that I like digging into controversial shit. So how much of people like Potential Bad Boy and stuff like that not getting their flowers is because they're Black artists in an industry that has become overwhelmingly white. And we're looking at this latest sort of revivalist wave of jungle, which has been led by a whole lot of white artists.
Well, all right. I thought the revival was coming from like
absolutely.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think that might be actually about 50-50 now, to be honest with you. Like just me being in that part of the scene and like sussing it out right now. Because you got like your Rupture and your Distant Planet and all these like, your Tim Reaper, and he's Black, right? And he's probably like he's arguably him and Coco Bryce. Coco Bryce is from Belgium. Right. Tim Reaper is from London, and he's a young Black guy, and he's making literally his sound is 94 to 95 jungle.
Oh yeah,
he's making it today, and a lot of people like. I mean, I'd love to talk to Fabio about this, because some people are like, no, we need to keep moving forward. But what's happening is people are like, we're looking back to move forward, right? Because
it's almost like we didn't spend enough time there back in like 94. We didn't spend enough time on it almost before we started to evolve. I felt like it moved really fast.
Well, jungle didn't change because of the music changing naturally. Jungle actually became drum and bass because you couldn't get a club to book a jungle night.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's deep, because jungle, when it really was a street thing, and at the time it had
1,000%.
It had the street, like, and So, you know, you had parties, and I plan to talk to a lot of people about this, that went from being like 70% black, 80% black, to that's completely
Yep.
switched by 1996. You know, because all of those people went to garage, and I know a lot of those people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing. We used to do garage as well. So, because the
Yeah, I was
jungle,
gonna say you've got quite the history with garage as well,
yeah,
man.
the jungle vibe went right to garage, because when people were like, okay, you're gonna take out the rare groove samples, you're gonna take out the reggae samples, you're gonna take out like make it less soulful in a way,
Yeah.
because it kind of did that to save itself. Like Fabio said, if we didn't do that at the time, there would be nothing now, because
Interesting.
Right.
you couldn't get a venue. That's really what it came down to. Jungle became a bad word because the media in England, they were writing about it like they did with Acid House.
Right.
Like, you go to a jungle dance, you're gonna get robbed. Your kids are gonna OD on drugs, and so the music didn't have anything to do with the music. It actually had to
Society.
do what was happening in society, you
Yeah.
know. And so I don't look on it like, I mean, that's what I'm a Junglist is about, from, you know, by
Right.
Rebel MC. You know the
Mhm.
song, everybody knows it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now I know, now now I understand. Now I see your wicked plan, right? I'm a
Right.
Junglist,
Right.
because they were changing from jungle to drum and bass. And the irony is that all the drum and bass DJs played that record, and then Rebel dipped. He took a break after that because
Wow.
it became it became something else, and that's fine because we got all of this great music. And I'll be honest with you, like I think it had to happen, but now we're all the way back to where we're like, now there's real jungle again. So all these people that were making jungle influenced drum and bass, everyone's just like, wait a minute, I could just make jungle again, like authentic jungle, and people are going to be loving it, you know. So
Absolutely.
and you're getting your fusions as well, like, you know, in drum and bass, which is good, like, which is probably like in the rollers you're hearing that jungle influence again, right?
Right.
And the
Right.
foghorn
Ooh.
scene, let's be real, the foghorn scene just sort of like the circuit that I was on, like, you know, it swallowed that circuit, like Rumble in the
Mm.
Jungle, all
Right.
those companies, it's Jungle Jam, like all those, it swallowed. So if you talk to a kid who's like 19 to 25 in Bristol, and they're like, I'm a junglist, I love jungle, they're talking about Kings of the Rollers,
Right.
Serum. They're
Right.
talking about that sound, because guess what? It's like Raga sample, it's got that jungle influence, but then it's pushing like the new jump up sound, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love
it
that.
swallowed that scene, to be honest with
Did.
you, you know?
You know what's really cool too is the part that I always knew that it would be okay, because you know I've only been doing this for 20 years now, unlike yourself, but in that time we always talk about, man, I miss this tune, or man, I miss that. And I'm like, that was like 2 years ago. And you know what's really cool is when you get the elder statesmen in a room. When I'd play gigs with Andy and you, or I'd play gigs with Bailey and you, or Goldie and you, for some strange reason, whenever you guys got around, there was always this is the night we play some old shit. And it was like, let's go back and educate. And every time, for the longest, you know, for the first couple times it was doing it, I was the guy learning while on stage. It was just
Right.
like, all right, I'm being taught trial by fire here.
Yeah.
But those nights always go off every single time. It doesn't matter how old that crowd is or whatever. When you go back to the essence of it, it goes off every time. So watching you now come back to that is a beautiful thing. It's exactly what this scene needs. We can do innovation all day long, and we'll continue to
Yeah.
do that. There's stuff
Yeah.
coming out now that's
Like, you can
awesome.
mix and match it for sure.
You have to, you know.
And that's what a lot of like people that are going to come in, they're going to flip it. Like, some guys are just going to be like, okay, I see what you're doing, but I'm going to take it further. And I think
That's what you're supposed to do, right? That's how it started. That's the parallel that we drew between, we were saying drum and bass is nothing but UK hip hop. It's the same
Mhm.
exact path. As a matter of fact, I just think they're on a faster trajectory than hip hop ever was, because they learn from what's going on. But it's the same thing. You just take it and flip it. Like, that's the
It's
whole
like they
point. You
learned
know what I
a
mean?
lot more about like jazz than hip hop has in a small sense. Not saying
Exactly.
that's
No,
overall.
that's a very good parallel, and even to
Yeah,
the simple fact that a lot of DJs now are like yourself, Marcus, who want to dip back into that. You can play the new stuff as long as you also go back. Hip
yeah,
hop had to make a very conscious effort to say that. Like, if you're going to play good music, play 3 new tunes and then a tune from way back. Throw a throwback.
exactly.
Like, we had to make a conscious effort of that. Well, I feel like drum and bass is doing that organically, and I'm very interested in where that's going to go.
Well,
Mm,
it's really funny with when like if you look at the parallel with hip hop, right? And you see what's happening now, like, we had like a good solid decade of trap, right? Like
For
beats.
sure.
And trap beats are like, you know, pop music. Like if
For
you
sure.
hear Justin Bieber or even like
It's the
some
new
really
R&B.
famous, yeah, they've basically said these are the sound of drums.
right.
So you can listen to a lot of pop records now, and they don't know anything about trap hip hop, but they know that that sounds like pop to them.
Mm,
You know, and I think uh, if you look at the parallel with like what like Dilla was doing in Ninth Wonder and Premiere as and Q-Tip, like as being like authentic hip hop, it's the same with Jungle, because now it's like what's one of the things that's really unique about Jungle is break beats, right?
right.
And 808s.
And
And when you
808s.
pop an 808 on a break beat,
It's over.
it's over. You could add pads, you could add a foghorn, you could add whatever, but that 808 and break beats, something magical about that, you know. And I think that's it's parallel with like um, authentic, like, because you could see a lot of the trap producers now starting to like sample soul again.
Yeah, it's dope. I was just talking, it's literally having this conversation this morning with Atlantic Connection. Shout out, by the way. And I was saying to him, and I made a joke last night. I made a comment last week about how lyrical hip hop is coming back in Atlanta. And I made the joke, and there's people would say, well, lyrical hip hop's always been Atlanta. But what I don't understand is, as old as I am and where I'm from in the boom bap era and the things that go in, that sound is a sound that is very, very distinct, and you can't compare it to anything else. And that sound is coming back. And the trap artists are even starting to use that. You're seeing some of the younger kids coming up with that lyricism vibe of, you would call it backpacker, but that's not what it is anymore. It's a completely different like renaissance of this sound. And I feel that and can't wait for that to happen inside of drum and bass. I'm starting to feel like the very soulful, like a lot of the American artists right now who are doing well, excuse me, are all have that soul and funk coming out of them. You know what I
True,
mean?
true.
It's just like there's something about that not only doesn't die, but no matter what you put on top of it as things get popular, they will always be at the core and rise to the top at some point.
Yeah. I also want to say that there's like more than any other genre, maybe drum and bass seems to have sort of a re-education moment, and I think it's mostly, of course, from like people who are just coming in, and they may know, but then they really get into it, and then they check back and they kind of like learn the names of. And I'm only saying this because yesterday I listened to L Sides on Twitch, and L Side played about 3 or 4 different remixes of records from the old days that are smacking right now. Listen, that is a, like, Elsa is, she's like 25, 26, 27. So it's like, yo, these guys are definitely
Is
not.
Elside that young, really?
Yeah, Elsa's
Yeah.
young, dude.
Oof. I see. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. But
I had no idea he was that young.
He's like
no,
Neither did
13.
I.
I'm
His
just kidding.
whole
boy wonder right there, bro.
Yeah,
foray
he's
into
young.
jungle seems
That's
like he knows his stuff.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Wow.
He's ahead of the
he's
game for sure.
and
That
he's
is.
high end talented. Cardinal Minds, of course. But whatever, we could bring Elsa back on the show another time. You know what I mean?
Calm down in the
So,
chat outside.
but just the whole idea that people like him and a few other young Slater and these guys are like looking at these old records, like for instance what he did with the Crust record, Outside, and I was just like scratching my head to like, yo, did he know that he's right along with what this record was back then. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's right there, and it feels a little bit updated and stronger on a level of like, yeah, these young kids,
They don't even
gonna run with this.
realize. They don't even realize. We have conversations with them all the time. I'm like, yo, you guys have no idea how much of old souls you all are. Like, it's weird because there was a gap, right? I don't know if you felt this. There was a time where we didn't see that at all. It was
Yeah,
just like it
absolutely.
was whoever was clicking on to click on, and it was cool. You were making great music or being technical. You're making very technical music, and it was technically prowess. And it was like, how do I match the sound of this? I'm gonna find a way to da da da. But there was a little bit of the soul missing, and it was still good music, but the soul was missing. Now it's kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
and
like,
now
generic, right? It got
yeah,
a little bit
Generic.
it
generic.
got a
where-
little generic after a while. You're like, all right, cool. You made the new sound. It's dope. Whatever. I like it because I'm a technical head. So, you know what I mean? When I hear that, I'm like, well, it's cool how you made it. But
Right.
it goes away just as fast as it came. You know what I mean? And now I'm starting to see these kids, and we have them on the show. And we'll talk to them and like, so like, what's your sound come from? And the stuff that comes out of their mouths. I'm like, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Round two. Legendary Marcus Visionary. I didn't even mean to rhyme there, dog. I'm so dope. I'm dope.
Bars and bars.
Every month.
So sick. How you been, Marcus? How have you been since the last time we spoke?
Not much has changed, man. Just studio and and that's it. Pretty much, like, I'm just locked down now, man. Trying to like make the best of this, so that
Yes,
hopefully
sir.
when things come back, like, and plus, I mean, I don't know, I'm a crazy person. I kind of changed my whole production direction.
Okay.
It's like, and I'm sort of starting from the beginning and kind of like, because there's a whole scene of new jungle and party companies and like, the scene, like we were talking about, the scene's so fragmented, like people have no idea that there's scenes within scenes.
All right.
The truth.
And everybody works for like different groups of party companies. And
You're talking about Toronto specifically?
no, I'm talking about
No,
the world,
everywhere.
man.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say.
I mean,
I'm talking
I
about
said
Atlanta's
Toronto's kind of fragmented too, but
the whole
Yeah.
world's like that. I mean, Atlanta's making a conscious effort to stop that. Like, we're purposely, like, no matter who throws a party where, like, we're all trying to do it together.
We're
you know?
not a better place.
I wish you Godspeed.
Yeah, no, exactly. We need that
you know
blessing for sure.
And to be fair, Toronto, like right now, like it's pretty good. Like if you get a lot of diversity at the parties. Like,
Mhm.
I
More than
feel,
most, yep.
because we're all playing different stuff. Like I mean, it can get really diverse sometimes.
Nice.
But yeah, like it's so people don't realize it's like, and everybody works on a different circuit. Like, I mean, even if you go to England, like I used to have, because obviously I used to do a brand of raga and jungle, and so I would work at like, Jungle Jam, Rumble in the Jungle, like Bristol companies, and
Right.
and but now that whole thing, the Foghorn thing, kind of swallowed that whole thing. So it's changed now, and the music's changed, and it was just like that wasn't the direction for me. So it was just like I was like, okay, I found my home again, but it's just sort of like it's a completely different place and space and different promoters, different DJs on that circuit. So I'm the new guy.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
exciting, isn't it?
It's really cool, man. Like, I mean, I'm hungry, so like,
Right.
it's like now it's like you continuously. I mean, being an artist, you guys know you have to continuously prove yourself.
Amen.
Continuously, that never stops. Like,
No.
unless you're like, unless you've hit that OG status, like GQ or Andy C. And
Right.
to a point, I have an OG status, but I'm talking about relating to bookings and stuff like that.
So do you think has your production wise, you mentioned like you pivoted, is your stylistically, has it changed, or are you just basically applying what you've been doing to a different target, I guess you could say?
Yeah, stylistically I've changed completely. Like, I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. Like, before I was a DJ trying to make music, and while promoting, and you know what I mean. And
Right.
the thing is, because there was no real raga jungle or jungle influence, people were very accepting of anything that would come through. And I mean, I'm the most critical of myself, like, you know, if I look back at my back catalog, like I'm just like, like you know, that was like, you learn in public, and it's, you know, that's a hard thing. But
Yeah.
The music that I'm making right now, like I'm way more proud of, and I feel like I'm making things that I feel like have shelf life, you know, like I'm back to like 160, 165.
Nice.
170 is as far as I'll go, but most of the stuff I made recently has been 160.
Nice.
Which is like, we'll tell you kind of everything. Like you guys are, there's no party, like other than like, you know, you've got Rupture, you've got a company called Distant Planet. I know that Tim Reaper's starting a company, but like, let me tell you, I've just joined the niche of the niche of the niche.
Right.
You know? Like, but I'm happy because
It's worthwhile.
Like, Overshadow, Moving Shadow, and all the jungle labels are back. So
God, everything Overshadow has put out looks beautiful. Oh my God, it is like the most beautiful stuff, man. Oh, their vinyl is just gorgeous, man. Oh.
So, Marcus, do you believe it's a deliberate thing going on where people are going back to those original tempos?
You know, there's something. I'll be honest with you. There's a soulfulness to, because the thing about jungle is like you fill the entire track. You know, so the moment like a little, you know, 16 bars of beats and bass stops, the pads come in, the vocals come in, and then when that stops, the ragga chat comes in, and then when that stops, the rave stabs come in, you know, and it's filled, and it's like original 90s dance music was just like, it was just like there was no point in time where you stopped dancing, but also too, the whole experience of the song is soulful, and I think you can't beat, you know what, you can't really beat break beats too. Sometimes the break can carry the song all the way through. Break beats.
Yeah.
Remember those compilations were 140 BPM plus, man, those early compilations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like that's what they were called. And it's so weird to think, well, I mean, they were actually called 140 BPM plus. I think Moonshine re-released them in the States. Mm-hmm. And like I remember, like, I mean, I'm talking like they were releasing like stuff from like Slipmat and stuff like that back before Slipmat went back into hardcore. Like, and it's easy to forget that jungle was at one point much slower than the stuff that a lot of people hear now. And I for me, like on what was it, the 17th, and people were calling it drum bass day because of like 174 BPM, and I'm like, man, I kind of wish we were a little slower than 174. You know, like I like 170.
Yeah, I love it all. I do find it awesome every time we do have those throwback nights and you go back and you do listen to how slow it was and how people listen to it, like, oh man, that's breaks. And I'm like, well, no. I mean, kind of, but not really. Like,
Marcus, describe like creatively, like what space you're currently like existing in terms of like the music you're making. How would you like describe that to somebody?
Well, I think, you know, well, it's funny I'm wearing this t-shirt.
Like, it's appropriate, right?
Reinforced, and I don't think those guys know. And I gotta send a big shout out to Mark Mack and Stretch and I mean, they were like a lifestyle and a movement, because when I saw their crew, I saw myself. You know what I mean? Like, and everything, their musical influences, everything that they put in that pot of food that they were cooking, like it just related to me, and they had the biggest influence on me, you know. And so I wouldn't say, because I don't listen to other people's music and then make music, but I definitely know that there's reinforced influences in my new music. And then obviously what happened with metalheads, you know, being like carrying the torch, Goldie carrying on. Exactly, you know, but I don't think that Reinforced really gets the credit.
Definitely not. And you've posted about this a number of times, actually. I remember seeing posts from you and Brad actually about like the monstrous sort of presence that Reinforced has over drum and bass, especially in the early days for a lot of people. You know, you bring up an interesting point though, like you don't listen to, you know, people's music and then go and make music like sort of in response. Do you at all? I mean, I know you're a DJ, so you've got to listen to a lot of music, but like when you are trying to get like your head in a creative space, are there things that you listen to that like outside of jungle and drum and bass? Or, I mean, is that kind of like your state? Where's your head at musically when you're just listening and you're trying to sort of get inspired, or you're just like tuning your brain up to like get ready to get creative. And I ask this because some people have said, like a lot like comedians will avoid other comedians when they are writing their hour.
Yeah.
And DRS was saying that he doesn't listen to drum and bass and stuff like that at all when he's writing. He listens to like movie scores and things like that. So what kind of stuff gets your brain juiced up?
Well, lately, I've been doing a lot of these throwback sets, like just revisiting my record collection, which honestly, like, made me fall in love with music again, because I stopped DJing at home, like because I was playing out. If you're playing out every other week or every week, like you just want to save it, you know.
Right,
and like
right.
I'm not like, you know, you get to a point of DJing, you don't have to, unless you're like Andy C, where you're doing triple drops and stuff like that. He loves to practice, you know,
with like
but
eight decks on deck.
yeah, and he, you know, he'll plan certain sequences and stuff like that. But for me, doing my radio show once a month was enough to kind of like, I'd work some stuff out, and then
Shout out to
and
Roscoe.
and then you're in the club, like, you know, during the week, because we had Thursdays, and then like every week, and then, you know, then you have the club nights and stuff like that. So I felt like I was out there enough, you know, so I didn't have to practice. But right now I've been digesting a lot of the old school jungle again, and hardcore as well, because that's the thing a lot of people don't understand. Like, this new scene's not only just brought back jungle, but they've been bringing back hardcore.
They have,
like, sort of like digesting that whole thing, because I think the way they're looking at it is like, remember, this stuff only had like a 3-year period, like, where right. So now it's like, Tim Reaper was saying in an interview, like, you know, I don't think it's been fully explored.
Yeah, I remember him saying that.
And I think it's true, because like right now, like, there's just like, I mean, Vinyl Junkie just started another record shop. There's like so many labels, actually, to the point now, there's so much vinyl coming. But I said to myself, I was like, wow, you know, I'm not going to be able to actually afford it with the postage, because the vinyl's not being distributed by a distributor to record shops. It's being like, it's all private sales through Bandcamp or through their record labels, because everybody's just taking back ownership through Bandcamp, which is amazing. Like, I mean, artists need to get paid. I mean, the Spotify thing doesn't work for underground music, and I want to see Bandcamp really like prosper in the years to come.
Hell yeah, I've been saying that for a long time.
Yeah, like the broken beat scene, the guys like IG Culture and even Mark Mack and all that, they have their whole scene, and it's pretty much Bandcamp oriented.
Right.
They get all of the money, you know. They don't really have to share too much money with Bandcamp, and it's amazing.
I would like to see the success of vinyl's resurgence, however, start to affect the fucking cost of producing vinyl, because god damn, it is so expensive. I keep on looking into it, and it's just like, it's prohibitively expensive.
Actually,
unfortunately,
it's been the main contributor to people going away from it.
Right, for sure.
You know what? It makes you think about what you're going to put out, because
that's true.
We are planning our next release, and we got a distributor. So big shout going out to Jay Robinson. He does Meditator Music and Prowling Lion. And he said to me, I sent him all of my music and the new music. He was the first person to hear it. And he said, out of everything, he chose 2. He's like, if I had to, I would put these 2 out. And if you don't want them, I'll put them on my label. And I just looked at Brad, and I was like, you know, I'm trying to make it in that scene he's already established. So we signed my 2 tracks over to Prowling Lion, which is his new label. And so he distributes and presses, and he does the whole thing,
really?
Mastering. Yeah. So we're in the process. So now I'm just making music, because we're looking for an A side and a B side, you know,
right.
And people are only buying very specific sounding thing, you know, you know, so it has to be like authentic jungle that's selling. Otherwise, you're just gonna have it on your shelf. You know, you're gonna spend like $2,500 to $3,000 just to have it sitting nicely on your shelf.
You know, it's funny, like you were saying, like the fact that like you're falling back in love with that music again, and Tim Reaper was like, you know, I don't think that sound has been fully explored, which is totally true. But in a more micro way, I think a lot of people are rediscovering their old records, because in their own way, they haven't explored their records as much as they could have. Like, it's kind of like you played them, right? You DJ'd them, but I think maybe it's like something that comes with age. You start to appreciate the things that you have and that you didn't appreciate them. You appreciate them in a way that you didn't before.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Hook that up to like right now, as like right now, the current times, everybody is pretty still. And now you have a time to literally reflect on records that you help labels push for the moment. And all of that, it's like, it's a whole new feeling overall, just because you're now really, this is something that I've been stressing about for a minute, about having the time to sit down and just listen, just vibe, let the instruments tear you apart here and there, and even have a moment
remember
to
why
look
you
at
did
the
it.
cover. Right. And look at the cover and the credits and whatever needs to be done. It's kind of sad to say that it's sort of a lost art.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know what though? If you could say that, but like with me seeing it come back, like, I mean, everybody's repressing now.
Right.
Like, you know, you got Lifting Spirits. I think, you know, I'm pretty sure Andy C's in there. Like, when I say everybody, I mean everybody. So the vinyl thing is very much back. And I think what you said there, Track, like, is like the effort that's going in. Because you know what? Like, I'm making sure that these records are right, because I know that, for one, they're gonna live on forever.
Right.
For two, if I miss the mark, I'm gonna be stuck with them, and I'm gonna be out my money, right? Like, because I said to Brad, like, even with our artists on our labels now, if they're passionate and they really want to press something on vinyl, they have to invest in it, because we won't cough up the whole thing, especially if sometimes it's something that we would say, because I worked in a record shop, so I might say, oh, you know what, I wouldn't put that one on vinyl.
Right.
Because I don't think that, because there is a very specific sound. People are looking for authentic jungle hardcore right now on vinyl. Like, that's what they're looking for. So not everything is going to sell, but that's what digital is for. Like, you know, if you just express yourself and it's not necessarily something that's going to sell right now in the vinyl market, you can release it digitally. So that's what we're doing.
You know, it's funny, because when we first started doing this show, that was a lot of the conversation that I've had with people on the shows. There's a lot of conversation with artists I've had behind closed doors. We've discussed it numerous times about taking this time and actually hitting the market of the listener, and how that's coming back, and how we're starting to care about the quality of things because we're home. It's not just about what can I make sound cool on a sound system. So actually, here we are a year later, when the world's been focused on this thing, and we have somebody here who's distributing that and making sure the quality of that is there. It's been a very interesting timeline to watch, and encouraging to see where it's going to go in the future.
For sure. I mean, it's been interesting, because, like, there's been, obviously, everyone comments on what people are making, and some people made dance floor bangers like all the way through the pandemic. Right. And I just thought to myself, I was like, obviously those things will eventually hit the dance floor, you know, because I think that there's like a year of music plus all the new stuff. Like, so the stuff that they've made over the year, I'm sure that they're still going to play it on the dance floor. But I think what's missing in dance floor drum and bass, to be fair, is I think, and it kind of comes, you know, we've got 3 MCs here, and I think you guys, for your benefit, a lot of records are made just for you guys, you know, and producers understand that now. And you know, if we look at, like, say, the jump up market or the rollers market, like, you know what I mean? Those records are made for MCs. They really are. They're
not super complex at all. So like your voice isn't going to get drowned out.
Exactly. So like, I think what would, like, I mean, Taxman right now, for me, he's making some really interesting stuff.
On fire right now,
because it's like he's so you know, he's creating, like, say, 64 bars of bass line, which you guys love because that's your moment, right? and then guess what? The pads will come in, and that's what a lot of people are not, or strings or something like that, right? That's what a lot of producers are not doing, and that's what made that, like, I mean, 90s music still influences everything today. And like the best records, to be honest with you, if you look at like the stuff that blows up, references that, you know what I mean? Like, but I think a lot of the producers, even guys that I admire, like, it's like this route where I could just make 64 bars, have a breakdown, having the same 64 bars, formula, and it's really well produced, and it will it will tear the dance, But if they just took it that little bit further and added like some music to it, like because I think you guys are great MCs, all three of you. You know,
I was
gonna-
thank you, Mr.
Thank
and
Visionary.
you listen.
let me,
You guys
mark
you
this
listen
part of the
before you
video.
talk.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the best MCs listen before they talk, so they know what they're talking over, right? And
Well,
it's just
that-
like I was gonna say, a pad or a vocal is not like after 64 bars of bass is not gonna mess you guys up.
Well, see, okay, so
You know what I'm saying?
this brings up a good point. This actually brings up an interesting thing because I stepped away from music for like 7 years, and then I came back to it in 2014. When I came back, it was like learning again in a way, because the emceeing itself was like riding a bicycle, but because digital had completely taken over, DJs now were like leaving their tunes in for like a minute or two. And like, so if you don't know the tune coming in and you got a rhyme queued up in your mind, and then all like the drop happens, but then all of a sudden there's a vocal, and you're like, oh, you don't really have any recovery time. Or if like there's something, you know what I mean? So it's like, well, hold on, wait, hold on. What I'm saying is,
pause 1 second, just so you know, Monty, you're not coming through your mic, you're coming through your computer. Just so you know that. I was just trying to figure out why am I here in the room and on Monty's side.
oh,
Select microphone.
Turn on microphone.
There
Check.
you go. See, there goes
There
the
you
line.
go.
Yeah.
all right.
I
What
didn't
I'm
say
saying,
anything
what I'm
important.
saying is, I was gone. I was gone for a long time, and when I came back to it, I had to like acclimate to the fact that DJs were not leaving mixes in for very long. They weren't playing a lot of the tunes, so I had to like, listening itself became like a new skill. Like that's just it was just something that I noticed that was very different. You had more.
The records are made for mixing now, like and
Right.
to be fair. So after that 64 bars, like I mean, if you see the way that most records are made, it's basically mix out time. So what Andy C, what makes him so brilliant, right? And the reason why is because what he's doing is he'll take the new stuff, he'll roll that bass line, he'll have that 65 bars of beats and bass, maybe a double drop in there, right? But guess what? A really big anthem always comes in right after that, like what a melody, a melody, like from a big Fresh song, or
I would even say,
or, you know,
I would even say he treats his third mix almost as if you would emceeing. So like in that mix where we would normally fill in that gap is when he teases a whole nother tune. Like he's really clever with it, man. It's been interesting to watch. But it's funny you even speak about that, because like a lot of people ask us, you know, it doesn't matter what type of style, doesn't matter if I've heard the tune before, or any of us for that matter. People always go, man, how you guys know? And you're right. It's because we listen first. And once you know the science of drum and bass, as a matter of fact, I find it's fun when a producer gets creative and actually flips the script and doesn't follow the math. And you're just like, that to me, it's amazing. It might trick me in the dance, but like it'll leave an impression in my head, like, wow, he really, you know, flipped that, or did an extra bar here that wasn't supposed to go, or came in early. Like that stuff's fun to me. But it is, you have no idea. Well, people have no idea how much good MCs who haven't practiced with a DJ, haven't done anything, you're just in there, you're listening, you're going off of whatever, you're going off of the math, and you know when a vocal's coming, you know when a vocal's not. Every now and then they'll flip it, and no one really knocks us, because people hate when you rap over vocals, but none of us hear the vocal come in and just keep going anyway. Like if it hits you let me rephrase that. I'm not talking about those people. those guys are. We don't like them either.
you know
all your MC haters out there.
No, we don't claim them.
We don't claim them. You know what I'm saying? It's a different thing.
You know what? Here's the thing. It's like there's always been a battle in drum and bass and jungle. It's like the host and the MC, right? And to me, the best guys that I love the most, they can do it both.
You got to,
of course.
You know, like that, like they're such good listeners, and I mean they add to, like, I mean, if you listen to like GQ at AWOL in like 94, 95, like it's just magic, right? Like, you know, he created like these magical moments, and the funny thing is he's just like, it's just because he's feeling the atmosphere of the music, you know, and he's being able to, like, you know, and he's not, you know, if a lot of MCs would be like, oh, he's not doing anything.
No, man. He has got, GQ for me still has, it's still the most magical, I think maybe even rave moment of my life. And it was at the Masonic Temple when they were shooting the video for Dubplate Pressure. And GQ that night wore, he wore head to toe red Hilfiger, shoes included. And that's when he had like the bleach blonde hair.
Yeah.
And it was that moment before he came on. And I think it was like Darren J and Andy that night. And maybe Brian or Frost.
I think Randall was there, wasn't it?
Oh, that's right. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Randall was there. And so, but he comes out, he comes out, but before he comes out on the microphone, he go like he's out of view from anybody. And he just says, yes, yes, like that. And the whole room's like goes, whoa. And then he comes out and people get even louder. And it was like the coolest thing I had ever seen, I'd ever seen any performer do ever. It was just so cool because just that little taste of his voice, everyone knew it immediately. And it was like,
I think a lot of new MCs, and I'm going to say this, and a lot of people will get upset, is like a lot of like for me personally, it first starts with the voice. Like, listen, you know what? I'll give you when I'm at a dance and there's no MCs, I pick up the mic to say what's up to people. But I haven't chosen the MC because guess what? I don't have the voice for it personally. I don't think, you know, and so that's why I don't MC. It's kind of like people say, you know, I would love to sing, but guess what?
Yeah.
So a lot of MCs, it's like, oh, I can do that, you know, and I don't think they understand. It's just like, it's like anything. It's like a lot of people don't want to look in the mirror, and that's the thing about drum and bass jungle. Anyone could do it, but the thing is, it's like people are born, like certain people are born for this. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, and I think that first starts with the voice, and then you could learn the craft. Because I mean,
craft,
there's
so
like
important.
Like Eminem's a great example for me personally, because Eminem is like an incredible writer. Like he's just like,
here it comes.
You know, he's an MC's MC, but for his voice annoys the hell out of me. So he hasn't been one of these people that I could like really listen to. But I listened to his first album and I was just like kind of blown away by the stories and whatnot. But he wasn't somebody that carried over for me because I was just like, I'm not like, yo, let me jam some Eminem right now. You know, like
I hear it all the time. Yeah, there are people say that about Kendrick.
The voice. Yeah.
People say about Kendrick. Kendrick's like one of the most prolific MCs. Yeah,
I like Kendrick's voice.
Well, Good Kid, Mad
to each
City,
their own. To each their own. You know,
Good Kid,
and
Mad
he's
City
changed.
probably gets a lot of play, but anything beyond Good Kid, Mad City,
he's changed his voice, and people are upset about it. So, like, no matter how great of the song rating you think he is, people got upset about it. And it's funny you say the thing about the MC. I wanted to go back to that too. Not to keep dwelling on the MC bit, but I've been saying for the last 30 years, I've been quoting the godfather of hip hop. KRS once said, every MC can rap, not every rapper can MC. And that is like one of the most important lines I tell MCs. Like, it's not just, I had to humble myself. I came from a battle rap culture. When I came into drum and bass, I didn't shut the hell up. Everyone, you know, I got raised by DJs who showed like, yo, man, be a part of the music. And that's when I started listening to the Foxies of the world. And people give Skibbity whatever, but you talk to Skibbity behind closed doors back in the day, and he would tell you I was just trying to become another instrument. There was no difference between what Skibbity is saying and what Rakim was saying. It was just like, let's be that saxophone, let's be that sounds before we even get into whether, because people like, he spits so fast he's not saying anything. Like, you're not listening, first of all. Like, that man is rapping bars left and right. And if you listen to the melodies and the sounds and inflections in his voice, that's what you should be paying attention to. Like, that's the flow of it all. So it's really good that people start paying attention to that part of the craft, because you know, in defense of MCs, man, it's a hard job. It's a hard job. We go up there every time
for no reason at all, and even up to a point where people will say he's too lyrical or he's too this. And
I've heard it all. I've heard people online say GQ needs to be quiet, and I'm like, fam, you need to step out of this scene completely. If you think GQ of all people, good times.
Yeah, it's a new generation, and I think they don't really like it. It's sort of, you're introduced to something that, you know, so you play drum and bass to them for the first time and they hear it with MC on it, and they'll just be like, I like the music, but I don't understand. But like, you know, that's the thing. It's an old like it's tradition, and I think we have to pass along the culture and the tradition.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to kind of teach people, and of course you're gonna have favorites. Like, you know, I have my favorites, you know,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
people that I love to listen to. But I think what needs to happen is more variety at parties. Obviously, like, or just multiple rooms, man. Like that, we got to bring that back.
And
'Cause, like,
authenticity is big too.
yeah.
Stop
Well, I
sound,
mean,
everyone's trying to
passion.
sound like everybody else, and that's not.
oh yeah, for sure. Well, I
That's a-
remember in the 90s, people, you know, DJs used to play, especially like around like 95 into 96. DJs would play all sorts of styles all the time. Like just the sets alone were very diverse, which is great. And then I don't know, 97 happened and things started really changing in terms of DJs would find certain sounds they gravitate towards, and then they would play a lot of that. You know what I mean? So I did want to get to a point which we haven't touched on yet, but you mentioned it a little bit. You talked about you don't DJ at home anymore, and you mentioned your show in Cool London. That brings up the point. A big part of your importance when it comes to not only Toronto's scene, but also like the North American scene, is the fact that you have a distinguished history as a broadcaster. So you've been involved in radio for a very long time. I'm one of the hosts on the show that you pioneered. Okay, so the prophecy itself has been going since 1994, which is longer than any other show in North America. And then you since moved on to Cool London. So tell us about your broadcasting journey, how that started. Kind of lead us through a little bit.
Well, I think
a lot of,
oh, go on.
no, I was gonna say, I think a lot of people don't know the full story.
Well, in the early, I mean, it might even have been the late 80s, early 90s, but when I used to listen to this guy named Malik X on Radio London, which I
Right.
mentioned in the last episode,
Mhm.
you know, it's the first time I heard pirate radio style English broadcasting, and he had all these catchphrases and everything, and the way that he would present records was exciting, you know. And also too, we used to get DJ Red Alert tapes, and you guys know how exciting that is.
Yeah.
Like, those tapes are
Right,
amazing. There's so many great New York DJs, so we used to get the mixtapes from, like, you know, Kid Capri and, you know, everything.
Ooh, don't get me started. Don't get me
Yeah,
started.
and just the hype and
DJ
everything.
Clue.
Oh yeah. So, you know, through getting mixtapes, but when we heard the English style, like, I mean, this guy can make Samande sound exciting, or like, you know, we're gonna get into the sounds of Soul to Soul, Pucka tunes, and you're just like, wow, you know, you're a kid and you're like, this guy's amazing. But when the rave thing started coming in, and he started talking about like rag and techno and the excitement of like these rave sounds, you know, and it was that fusion of like, you know, you could hear the Caribbean influence in techno, and, you know, it's like Detroit meets the UK, and it was just like, and then with his hosting over it, I was like, I have to do this. And like, when you were a rave DJ in the early 90s, it was everyone's goal to get on the radio, but
Right.
not everybody could get on the radio. So
That's right.
I started on a university station. I went in and I applied, and we had a show there. And back then I used to have all of the DJs like Roughneck and Medicine Muffin.
And that was on 88.1, right?
On 88.1, but it had
Yeah,
a
yeah.
smaller signal. So we had a listener call in, and he was like,
Which university
listen,
was that?
Ryerson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so right downtown, right next to Play the Record, actually, right close there. And he's a listener phoned in and said, I know someone over at 89.5, which was University of Toronto radio,
Right.
which was 15,000 watts, because 88.1 had like a very small signal, I think,
Right.
like, really tiny. And so, I mean, it's big. It was a powerhouse of a station. It had a lot of the best DJs on there, like Ron Nelson, DJ X, all the house music guys. So we got on 88.1, and then we went and applied to 89.5. So that was Barrie to Buffalo, Kitchener to Coburg. And
Right.
it's funny because you're from Buffalo. And so
Oh, yeah.
we had like the Buffalo heads, you know, and then Coburg is an hour east of Toronto. So we were hitting everything. And it was really like, it was one of the only places to hear the music regularly, like every Sunday. We followed Hard Drive, which was like one of our big influences. He used to play hardcore, but he started going into progressive house and playing
Right.
less hardcore and jungle. because there was a split, right? A lot of guys went to the house direction. And, you know, when it started getting more jungle, a lot of the guys were like, that was the split for them, because hardcore was really happy. It had that mix of a little bit of like reggae, but it wasn't like overt, right? But when it started to get more jungle, a lot of guys were like, I'm going to go play progressive house, because they just didn't see a future in it for themselves, right?
Right.
And I mean, to be fair, they were looking at like, I mean, people start looking at like, you know, I want to make a living. And it's the same reason why Carl Cox went that way as well.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't realize Carl Cox used to be a hardcore DJ. Right?
A guy called Gerald too was a hardcore DJ, was he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like most of the jungle guys, like if you're around in the early 90s, like we all played hardcore. Like it was like, and before that it was like bleep techno, and then before that was house and techno, you know, acid house. And, you know.
So when you guys moved to 89.5, what year was that?
95.
It was 95. Okay, so you were only at 88.1 for a year. When you and you know,
well,
it's something
you know what? I think we might have been at 88.1 a little longer, because but I don't count it, because I didn't count it until we got our show. They make you cut your teeth, so they make you come in at all these weird hours. But as a raver, and so we did that like for a long time, like just coming and filling in for different shows and stuff like that. But I don't count it. I mean, I did 20 years straight from 95. So did 20 years, and at the time I did it. I had DJ Prime. Right. He was my main partner, and then we started. You know, after about a decade, like, you know, and I was DJing a lot. We started to bring in a lot of guys like to host, co-host with us. So when we couldn't make it, like if we were away or whatever, so I had Mr. Brown and Gremlins, and then eventually, by the closer to the 20th year, Mr. Brown was like pretty much running the lineup. So he had like Polaris and Scott Free and yourself and
So describe that time, only because I think we get feedback now, because partially because we're in COVID, right? So we have to pre-record the show. It's not done like in the studio. They're still not letting people in the studio right now. And then all four of us have completely different approaches to the show. So like every week that you listen, you don't know really what you're going to get. And a lot of people are like, you know, especially with me, I play all vocal drum and bass. And so I don't feel the need to do lots of talking. And when I do, I take a more relaxed American radio DJ approach to it. You know what I mean? So unlike you, where you were just like, and that was the new one. And like you were like exciting. Like you were pumped about the tunes that you played. This is actually funny. And you know, it's funny. There was a post recently on Instagram that it was a nod to Sassali. And I remember you used to say his name sometimes. I'm like, who the fuck is this Sassali guy? And what kind of a name is that? Like, it was the coolest name. And we used to say it was like Sassali. Anyway, it's really funny because like we all have like these different approaches to the show. Yeah, I've been doing a deep dive on jungletapes.com, which catalogs like Toronto radio, especially in the 90s. And a lot of those shows, especially The Prophecy, was like a little mini rave in there. You'd had a couple of people actually DJing. A lot of times Caddy and El Natural would come to the studio.
Shout out.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm talking, there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of tapes with Caddy and El Natural. And like El Natural at the height of his fucking powers was like
the dude,
one of the best MCs I've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure.
And like I still lament the fact that he's like not in it anymore. But to kind of describe that time, was there ever like a point where you're just like, man, I don't feel like bringing the text down, I don't feel like doing this? Like, but was it always kind of like a live, like, oh, this is like a destination for me on Sundays, like this is a thing to look forward to? Because it just seems like such a vital like cornerstone for Toronto scene, and I think a lot of people don't appreciate how important it was back then.
To be fair, man, honestly, like I think it was just the last year that was the hardest, because just traveling to the station, it got expensive, you know, like, you know, because just to always go to the station. But that's like that was it. Like that's the only drawback I see, like we were always, especially the first like 15 years, man, like it was like we're going to the state, we're excited, you know,
Right.
especially depending on what you have. And if somebody was in town and you were going to have like, and a lot of guys were over on Sunday because like most people, and they would ask us to come down.
Right.
Because like, I mean, that Shy FX show with Skibba and Fearless, basically after that, it was like people would come to, we bring them in for Friday, Saturday, and they play Milano on Sunday. So that was the whole thing. That was the setup. So they would come, do the prophecy, and then they'd go to Milano on Sunday and surprise play at Liquid Funk, man. Toronto was like, we were like London. And
yes, it was.
Dude, I've said it a million times. It's crazy.
I miss it. Like, at one point, like I think a lot of people, you know what? It's so funny because I saw Frost doing something on mental health, and
shout out Frost.
We had such a long run, like for 18 years. Like we had a run where it was just I didn't need to go anywhere, and especially through the 90s.
A lot of I heard that a lot, not about you, about the bigger Toronto DJs in general, you, Sniper, Mystical, like it's even people like Everfresh and stuff like that. Basically, I was always like, why are they not playing in the States more? Because they don't need to. Exactly, that was it. And it was like one of those things where, like in Buffalo, we always like. It took a little bit longer for jungle and drum and bass to catch hold. We were always like in awe of what was happening in Toronto, partially because we're a small city, right? So like we didn't understand exactly how big the GTA was. We didn't understand it was hard for us to understand the sheer presence of dance music in Toronto's overall general culture. It was just different. It wasn't like that in the States. So man, we were always
it wasn't just Buffalo, just to be clear. Like in my heyday, Philly was at its prime, and we looked at you the same way. And I said that, we talked about it earlier. All of these things kind of play a factor. How much Toronto was like a second London to literally all of us. You guys, we went there to get that vibe. I also think it kind of played into a part of how we also spoke about how you guys didn't get the flowers you deserve because you didn't need to. You know what I mean? But you always were such a tight community. Like, and shout out to Sniper and Mystical, like who are also legends in their own. We need to have them on here, as a matter of fact.
You guys got to get Lush on, man. He's my partner in crime.
Oh, dude, Lush. By the way, Lush.
We call him the last Mohican. Man.
Lush needs to, for real. I've said this to him many times. Lush needs to write a book, or at the very least, put his fucking Facebook posts into a book. He is one of the funniest writers I have ever read in my life. He is so funny.
Yeah, anyway. It's like you guys are definitely like your own efficiency. And I mean, what's trippy for me is I'm spoiled. So like my first party up there was Theory. Like that, that blew my mind when I walked in. That Metalheads Theory literally walked in, everything green and gold in that giant metal structure in the middle of the dance floor. I will never forget that day. You know what I mean?
And that was still after like
every party
the
after
boom of the 90s, and the 90s were crazy.
Which is
I think a lot of the anti-rave legislation in Toronto kind of.
You know what? I'll tell you, 1991 to 2008. Right, was just.
So I came in the smack middle of that. Go ahead.
It was nonstop, man. Like, and it was crazy. And I think, see, when dubstep hit, it's like we hit a wall, right? Because from 2005 when I signed with Digital Soundboy, it was like me, Benny Page, Breakage, Shy. We were all doing this like jungle kind of revival thing that was happening, but then dubstep came and it like ended in 2008. I'll remember in the Toronto scene, I remember going to some parties, especially we had some parties in the Orange Room. We had some big DJs. And I just remembered looking around and I was just like, the energy's changed.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, it's feeling like it's over, And after that, you see the EDM thing started to come in. Let me tell you, that was the hardest period for me. Because it's like, I was at that point, I was traveling. I was with UMC from 2005 to 2008, and I was going everywhere. I got to go on tour with Shy, like, you know what I mean? It was like Shy played, then Andy C played, then I played. That, like when I went to England, like just crazy things were happening. Yeah, and at that time I had vinyl. Can you believe it? Like,
Oh my God.
it was just like, but
Back is still recovering.
man, I'm telling you, like, so after, like, that's when I felt like, now I look back, man, mental health suffered, because it was like,
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
like there was a point where I was playing, I remember I'd gotten sick because I'd gotten gastroenteritis, it was called. And I went to the doctor, and it was just like, stomach swelling or whatever. And he said to me, he was like,
no big deal.
He was like,
it's a serious thing.
He's like, how much are you drinking? And I said, well, I'm playing out. Like at the time I was playing 7 nights a week. So we had Magic Mondays, we had Jungle Nation on Monday, we had Tuesday was Fungal Junk, Wednesday was System Soundbar.
Holy shit, Fungal Junk. I haven't heard that name in forever.
Thursday was Beat Junkie. Friday and Saturday was
Junkie.
Rave. Sunday was Prophecy and Liquid Funk, Milano. And that went on for, that what I just named off went on for years. Right? So like you come to Toronto, like, you know how we talk about like vacation festivals?
Yep.
Like if you came to Toronto for a Friday night and you stayed Friday to Friday, you could be and let me tell you, Tuesday was no joke. Wednesday was no joke. Even say if Monday with Jungle Nation, even though it wasn't like a whole bunch of people, the vibes were like through the roof.
Yep.
Thursday at Beat Junkie was just like everyone's just hitting the walls and the ceiling. It was just like, so it was like that constantly. So then when everything hit a brick wall in 2008, and it was just like, oh, I have to retool. And then everybody was like, this pop EDM drum and bass was coming in. That was obviously for us, that was like the enemy. We were like, what is this uncultured?
Is the word.
Like, like I hate to say it, just totally bleached out pop version of like they were trying to package the culture for a mass audience.
Yes.
Totally.
It killed Miami Music Conference. All of a sudden became Ultra, and all these things happened. And man, let me tell you, like it was a really,
I keep
really
trying to tell y'all. Thought I was out here just talking shit.
That's over now, and I thank God. Like the underground
People
is back.
don't remember,
fully,
man. People don't remember Miami back in the day. It was different, and we still played it because it was not to sound like it was what it was, but now you just go and you leave. Like,
that's it.
No, but Miami used to be like incredible. It was
you'd
like
go and
Sun and Bassy kind of vibes in a lot of ways. It was the
little messier, but
and a lot messier probably. What I'm saying is it had that vibe in the sense that you could go to pool parties and like you'd see people just, it's like John B, like Valiant MC, like you know what I mean, on the beach, and it was like a very casual thing, except the Ultra Party. Or like the World Renowned Bass Party or something like that. But like during the day and some of the smaller events were it was so cool.
But even they started to phase out. But there's only 2 places in the world I ever get nervous in playing to the end of my career, and it's like smack dab in the middle of London and smack dab in the middle of Toronto to the bitter end. From the very last gig we played at Government, like first of all, I had to stay away from the internet. Because I remember, I don't know how many years
Toronto is terrible.
No, but not even.
They are though,
for sure.
They're cruel, man.
They're cruel, very like. But here's the funny part: is like I had been MCing for a very long time, and I remember the first time I had played with Andy, and I made the mistake of going to hit the message boards, and people were like, "Who the fuck is this Armani character? Why is he coming here? You have no idea." And I had played Toronto a couple times. I'm like, fam, like this is important. Like this scene to me in T-Dot is special. It always has been. It's always been accepting. Like and ever since then, I feel like that city's really embraced me when I've come up there. Like you've always shown love, but like we go super far back, and like I don't know, man. It's just it's different. I always tried to because the question is here in the States is like, why is that not here? So when I asked you earlier if it was a conscious effort to mimic that, because we have the question about what pushes a stateside drum and bass more. And a lot of it is creating our own thing and standing on that, when you guys did the opposite of that and we're successful in keeping it. But I guess at the end of it, no matter what, it's making sure the roots of it are pure.
100%. Like, I think, that there was a conscious effort for that. But I mean, I think we were the happiest accident to ever happen, because if you think about it, happiest accident, man, because like I look back on it now and like, I don't even think like, I can't name too many cities. Like, I mean, I know people were playing out like Nicky Nine Jobs, he was playing out like, they'll play out during the week, but we had a scene that was a full week, which is crazy. And some of the big parties were like, because Theory at one point, Theory was working with Empire, and we were at System Soundbar on a Wednesday.
System Soundbar, woo!
And Wednesday was like, it was a Saturday, and there was a front room and a main room. Like, so you imagine we had so many Saturdays on a Wednesday. By the time Friday and Saturday came, and like, so, and let me tell you, the pool of DJs was so big, like,
and MCs.
And MCs, like so many, like there's so many guys we used to work with on the circuit. Like, I mean, and, I got to give a shout out to everybody, because, a lot of the big guys get mentioned all the time, but there was like so many, 50, 60 guys.
Oh,
because
yeah, dude. There was so many.
Because, there was so many jobs. And so there was no complaints about, like, as things got worse and smaller, especially after 2008, it was kind of like this vibe of like, why is Marcus playing out at everything? It started to be like that because there wasn't enough work. So as things started to get worse, it was sort of like I had to explain to people. I was just like, listen, if my phone rings, right? I said, if your phone rings, are you gonna turn down work? Right? Because when it gets skimpy, they're like, okay, who are we gonna book that's gonna bring in people?
Yeah.
So they would choose. It became like, we're gonna have Lush, we're gonna have Mystical. It's
unavoidable too.
It got smaller, and so you got 100 DJs now who hate you, and that happened, and we still haven't quite solved that. Like, over because it's such a popular music, and there's so many people that want to be a part of the industry. But it's just sort of like I do this for a living. So it's kind of like I say to people, and Brad, I have to salute him, because he always says to me, he's like, yo, if people are hating on you because you're working, he's like, you need to ignore it. Like, he's like, you just need to do what you need to do. He's like, when your phone rings, when your phone rings, because it used to affect me. And there was a little time where I would give myself time out. And I started, when you start, this is advice I give to everybody. Never dim your light.
Never.
And I did that.
And it's easy to do. It's very easy to do.
For a few years. And it affected me. It actually affected my business, because I was like, okay, I'm going to take a back seat and I'm going to give all these people an opportunity. But guess what? No one
they didn't appreciate it.
No one appreciated it. It was just sort of like, and it's even to the point now, I even saw some people write during the pandemic that they hope that we're all not coming back. It's just like after the pandemic, because they're younger DJs. Right. And it's just like, I don't think they understand that this is what I do for a living. Like, we're going to be
you put in so much blood, sweat, and tears. Like, I never understand that. Like, yo,
social media makes it really easy for people to complain, just to complain sometimes.
Success took a shot at you. What are you going to do? How are you going to kill it? You're going to become unsuccessful?
Oh man, I kind of like the fact that now it's like, the truth is the whole world has to rebuild, and we're back to brick one now. When this thing is, and when the scene comes back, there is no scene actually, I'd say, in Toronto right now. And I think when we come back, it's going to be like these tiny little parties. Like, I have a company called Wax. We play all vinyl, but I said to Brad, I was like, I'm done being a promoter. A lot of people are going to be like, yay. Right. But I've got my record labels. So we're going to do our label nights. And I'm going to do my Wax party. But in terms of like, we were doing these warehouse parties, and I'd invest like $9-10 grand and get back like $100.
Oh, compound.
Or we would lose money. Like,
you talking about compound?
Oh yeah, we had compound, we had transmission. There's a couple others, like a tempo, like, and my partners were like Drew Hill from Last Planet, big him up, because they're doing great things.
Shout out.
They do.
Super
shout out.
shout
That's awesome.
Mr. Brown and Lush. And all three of those guys, I got to give them credit. Like, they just want to throw a cool party. They don't really care if they make a penny. But the thing about it for me was I was the only one who did it for a living. So it's like, it really, like, when we didn't make any money or we lost money, I was just like, okay, I don't even know how I'm going to pay my mortgage this month.
Right.
And it was like affecting my mental health. I was just like, okay, because we were, and I realized, and that's why I have to step away, because they're throwing parties just to have a cool party, and I need to do something that's gonna. So you have to have a balance. Yeah, exactly. There has to be a balance of both, and I want to find that balance. Like when I throw a wax party, I was always making way more money than I did when I did a compound, which is really sad because compound was huge.
It's crazy.
And with wax, I had like 80 people, 100 people, and I would make great money, pay my bills.
And the audience doesn't know those factors too. It's such a strange dichotomy. So this new project you're working on, I know you got a lot done. Or do you have a timeline of what you're doing, or are you just pushing until it's ready?
Man, it's crazy. Like, I'm trying to get as much music done, because like that's the thing. I think people don't understand. So I thought about it today. It's like you're making music under pressure. It's good. It's good and bad.
Oh, yeah.
But it's kind of like you say to yourself, it's like, okay, if I don't make enough music, I gotta just pack this in and do something. You know what I mean?
And it's not even necessarily true. That's the craziest part about it. It's like, it's just your brain, like the way we've been trained to hustle. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's trippy. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Right now I'm just like, the timeline is sort of a race to open. Like, yeah. So when things open, but to be fair, man, we're not doing well in Toronto. Like, we're doing really poorly right now in COVID. So like, we have our hospitals, our cases are going up. They're trying. We've been really, really bad at getting people vaccinated, just because we didn't have, like, we got the throwaway AstraZeneca vaccine, by the way.
Did you? Like, I didn't even know what was going on. That's not cool.
And that's a 62% compared to Moderna and Pfizer, which is 95%.
Right.
So yeah, my girl and I are waiting for those two, because I'm like, listen, I don't mind getting vaccinated, but I want, if you say 95%, that sounds a lot better protection than 62.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I'm super pro-vax, and it's been hard for me to tell people not to touch the AstraZeneca, John. Like, it's not. Well, don't do that. It's just.
What I wanted to add to that is that we are watching progress. We are now part of the progress we don't normally watch. So, like, all this super fast, so-called super serum sort of ordeal, it still takes an X amount of years before they get it right. We're already in year 2. And you can commend the speed. You can commend the fact that we have something, at least, to try to open up a few doors. But what we're looking for is still maybe a couple years away, maybe another year away. It's fine that they're putting money finally into these situations more than they would have done in the past, which is the biggest thing.
I'll simplify it for you. It's that the technology behind the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine is something I've been staring at since it was first talked about back in last February. So when I'm already reveling at that technology and marveling at how innovative that is, and then someone comes up 6 months later like, we've got something better, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm already trying to deal with this thing over here, and you're like, we made something better than they did in less time. That's when I'm like, all right, nah, we're not doing that. But
you're absolutely right on that part. That, because it shouldn't be a competition. It just should be about.
No, like, you should all be working together, if anything. Like,
and thank God it isn't. Thank God it stopped from being a competition. Is the best way to say that.
That was weird. But I understand what you're saying, Mark. It's just like that whole setting your own personal deadlines on this. Like, I'm working on an album right now. We didn't the whole reason why we are this far in the album is because we didn't put anything on it. We were just like, let's create what we create. But I'm leaving next week to go finish it because we're like, it's been a while now. We're like, all right, let's wrap this thing up. You know what I mean? But even that, we decided to wait until we can meet together because you're doing that thing. You know how you get to the end of the album where it's the last 3 tracks and your whole style is like, this is all free flowing, this is all going to be good. But then you're like, the business part kicks in and you're like, well, I need this type of sound to match this. I need this one because it's missing. And you're like, no, step away and not do that thing. You know, it's just because when people don't understand in the creative process, when you're wrapping things up and you're like, all right, how do I put a bow on this? That starts to take over instead of the creativity. So that's why I always ask people, like, where do you think you are in your creative process? Is there a timeline or are you just letting it flow?
So I just we have a label called Inner City Dubs, and it's basically, it's just like a UK garage, UK funky, which I guess you call it Toronto funky because it's all stuff I've made.
I remember the Toronto funky. Yeah,
broken beats or whatever. Yeah, so we've done like, you know, I don't know, we've had like 11 or 12 releases on the label, and I just did a mixtape for it because like now that I'm getting deep into jungle, there's going to be a lot less of that being made because I'm not going to take as much time out. So it's got 35 tracks on it.
Hey,
I mixed this thing together, and it's so funny because it goes to what you're talking about. Like when you get to the point where you're wrapping it up, I actually listened to it and I called Brad and I was like, I don't know, I might make a few new ones.
Yeah. Every time.
And then I took like a week away, and then I listened to it again, and I was like, this is dope. This is bad.
Just leave it.
And I'm like, it's done. And I was laughing about it for like the last few weeks about how our brains are in that, because I'm like, yo, most people haven't heard any of this music.
That's a trippy thing, right? People don't think about that because a lot of people don't know about that part of the creative process. So we've been working on this album for a year. It's the same thing. Like we've heard these tunes 1,000 times already. And it took us, sometimes it takes to just like put it away, forget you did it, walk away. And then you go back and you're like, oh, right. And then you play it, or if you play it to someone new and they're like, this is crazy. And you're like, oh yeah. But to me, I've heard it 80 times. So I'm over analyzing every single thing I did. Like, well, we could change this. We need more of this. And it's like, no, I think we're almost done. Let's just wrap this up. You know, and it took
sometimes simpler is better, right? It's like
you gotta step away from it.
Yeah.
I can only relate with something outside of music, which still relates to music, was as Monty knows that I kind of got to the finish line of a few edits, and I never felt
for video,
ever on anything. And I just remember just everything being done and feeling like I could eat a whole chicken right now, bro. Like it's on.
My wife who took art in college said something a long time ago that sticks every now and then. She says you're always one paint stroke away from ruining the entire thing.
Ooh.
I was like, you're right.
You could overthink it, man. And like, you know, add a little too much salt and ruin that whole gumbo. Right?
It's done. When's the mix coming out? How's that?
Well, I think we're gonna drop the mix probably like in July because it's a summer vibe.
Perfect.
It's like it's total like broken beat, funky, like just good vibes, party vibes. There's a few deep things on there, like because it's like basically a look at the label, and it's me turning a page. I always find I do like a mix when I'm turning the page on something, you know, because it's kind of like to say, okay. And I'm actually really glad because, you know, when you put out singles, a lot of people like my girlfriends who are into music, a couple of them buy the odd song or single, but you know, these are DJ cuts,
right?
So they're not buying them. So for the first, it sort of ends up being like an album where most people are going to hear all of these songs for the first time. They're going to listen to the mix, but they've never listened to the, you know, those cuts because they're just baseline songs,
right?
You know, so I'm really excited about it, man. Like, you know,
what's the name of that?
That's Inner City Dubs. It's going to be just the mixtape, and it's my alias for making that kind of music is called Stereo Mars. Like anytime I play house or anything like that in the city, I go by Stereo Mars. I don't
nice.
I did not know that.
Yeah, like
it's a hot.
It's a pretty new development, you know. Like because I realized when things come back, I have a friend who, MC Flipside, I want to say a big
Hey,
Wow.
shout out.
yeah. And he was like, he said to me like about a year ago, like actually before the pandemic, he's like, why don't you play house? And I was just like,
He's a big house head.
yeah. And I was like, who would book me? He's like, I would book you.
For sure.
And he's like, he throws a lot of big shows. He brings all the big
He
boys
does.
over, and he's involved. Like Megs is his girlfriend, and then
He
I had another friend.
stays busy.
They were like, because they basically for work, they were like, yo, you could work at these underground clubs that we have in the city, and I mean these nights go from 10 till 10 in the morning.
Right.
So they need the DJs. So I was just like, but then pandemic happened. I was preparing for it, and then the pandemic happened, and that just got shelved. So I don't know if I'll see if I need to. It's sort of one of those things. It's like the music business is like that. It's like you got to wear many hats, like
So many.
so many. Actually, there's so many artists who have real jobs that people don't know about. They're real low key about it. I haven't had a real job since Played a Record back in the 90s.
Lady Record.
Yeah, so big shout to Eugene. But so this has been my full-time gig. So, but for me, playing music is like, come on. It's like, I'd rather do that. Brad was like, you can come work with me over here at the airport, or you can go play some music. Yeah. He always says that to me. And I'm like, all right. When I'm complaining about having to go play like an EDM drum and bass night or something.
Right.
He's like, he's like, go to the Beatport Top 100, sort yourself out, or come work with me. Like,
That's
it sobers me up,
A little bit, real quick.
I was talking to Gremlins the other day, and he's an underground DJ, and he was really encouraging. Because I was telling him that debacle, I was like, "What's gonna happen when I come back and and I have to play outside of my box?" And he was just like, "You know what, man? Nobody's gonna judge you for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, go do what you got to do. Like, and I always find music that I can live with.
Right.
Because like I can't just go out and play.
You can't go super left.
Exactly, but it's that's become difficult because there's some DJs who just play what they play, but they also work less.
And I feel like people need to. There's a lot of people out there who play what they play because they're afraid of the backlash, and that needs to stop.
Right.
That needs to stop, especially nowadays, because that's what this whole generation is about. It's been about that for a long time. It's been about that before people started noticing it. You know what I mean? Like the mashup culture was a huge wave, and people still walking around like purists of this and that. I'm a main, you know me, I dabble in everything, and my argument has always been from the beginning, like, fam, I came from a different place to begin with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What you're not going to do is pretend like I didn't pour blood, sweat, and tears into the scene and I don't have a love for it. You're out of your mind. Wait, I don't have to prove that to anybody, but if I did, I have the receipts. Like, it's fine. You know what I mean? But I just love making music, and I love how many things went. As a matter of drum and bass taught me to appreciate other forms of music.
100%.
Point blank, period. So, go do you. Do what makes you happy, and the better you get at that, the more beneficial you can be to the scene that you came from.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, like, because especially, I mean, you guys do this for a living, and it's like finding that balance of like being able to survive and pushing your art, but what I actually am excited about, because there's a lot of people like me in the city who realize it's like new beginning. This is like a new time, like, and I'm seeing it worldwide right now. So I think the pandemic helped change that, like,
yeah,
I don't think we're going to be back to the status quo after this.
I don't either. And you know what? I believe there's a lot of status quo that will still happen, but I believe
I was about to say, you can't stop that.
Yeah, you can't stop it.
Somebody's going to come out of somewhere and be like,
for all of us who were begging the foundation to come back, it's here now. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The quality music is there in every genre, as a matter of fact. It's not even a drum and bass thing. We have this conversation all the time. Like, I'm loving the state of hip hop right now. Like, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for this day for a while, and I feel like that's happening in drum and bass as well, across the board, you know? And the people,
100%.
those people do what they do, and shout out. I still listen to it.
each his
It's-
own, man.
Oh, you know
what
what?
I mean?
Yeah, I mean, listen. You know what? If there's one thing, is like I'm not knocking at all what people
No.
like, because if you grew up, it depends on your influences, right? And it puts you in a place where, you know, I have friends who love EDM drum and bass wholeheartedly. They love it. That's their thing, you know, and it resonates with them. And I can't knock that. You know what I mean?
I get it.
But I come from the underground, and like those are the things that resonate with me. And they are like, I just don't get it, right? So music's like food, right?
Right.
It's like it's all about like your influences and how you grew up, and
What you
everyone's
mean
gonna
you don't like
different-
chicken curry?
Oh, you can't be on our
What?
show if you don't like that. Hell nah, man. Heads up, artist. I
Listen,
don't care
man.
how big you are. No, I'm
It's
playing.
good. It's good to talk to you. It's good to see you. I can't wait till
Yeah.
we are face to face and get to hang out and listen to some
Yeah.
records together on a dope sound
Also,
system.
I wanted to
Yeah.
say real quick a big thank you to you guys, you and Caddy, for my time up top in Toronto and bringing me around some of the most amazing parts of my story. And you guys were front and center. Every time something was going on, Caddy be like, "What you doing? All right, well, get yourself ready." Blah. All right, let me go. And Marcus right now is tearing down a space or whatever. And I have like ample amount of classic moments with you guys, man. But I've always been very appreciative of that, especially for a New Yorker coming to a new city and not knowing jack. You know what I mean? So other than family, so big ups to you and big ups to Caddy for those.
It's really great to see you guys do it so well, man.
Hell yeah, man.
You guys are like, I mean, you guys are killing it right now. And I mean, I saw your last video, Armani.
Oh,
I was
thanks,
like,
man.
That right
Trying
there.
to-
I was
trying
like,
to-
I thought to myself, I was like, you know, I love when you hear somebody and you know, like, and it's like, you know, he's on a different vibe right there, and like you see a progression. It's like, I mean, I hope that people see that with me when I come back. You know,
I'm
like
sure
that's
they will,
all
bro.
you know. Yeah,
And
for
if
sure.
not, like Mark Mack always telling me, man, just keep creating the discography. They'll come back and see
That's
what
it.
for.
But
Well,
yeah,
thanks for having me, fellas. I
no,
really
thank
appreciate it.
Oh,
you
God
for
bless,
coming.
man.
The honor is ours. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yes.
the wonderful, legendary, I can't give enough flowers. I promise you there's not enough in the world to give. This man has picked up so many, and we are blessed to see you continue on that path. Marcus Visionary, ladies and gentlemen, it's Roti and Poutine. Thank you for joining us. Take care of yourselves and each other.
Valiant. Amani. Track. There goes your theme music right there.